The story begins with the fact that a high school teacher told students about the unusual monsters of the wolf type of the first level. The man said that for the first time such monsters appeared in Chunzin. These mutants can penetrate the walls of the city and punch the armor of tanks. The usual weapon of mankind was useless against monsters. There were masters of martial arts who were able to defeat the monsters. It was found that key energy can be used to fight against mutants. The teacher told students that the cultivation of internal ki was added to the program of secondary general education. The teacher told students that a new era began in the history of nationwide practice of martial arts. Their secondary school was no exception. The teacher pointed his hand to the board and said that several days were left before the entrance exams. Each of the students should work hard on the development of their inner ki. This will help to enter a good university. The main character was called Chen Yu. He accidentally hit this world a month ago. For the protagonist, it was a dangerous world of martial arts. At the same time, someone launched it with a box. The system said that a soul was discovered that did not belong to this world. Chen jumped up with displeasure near the desk. He shouted that it would be necessary to cover all expenses again with donut. The system again said that the found soul does not belong to this world. The guy was surprised to stand in the classroom and realize that he had fallen asleep during the lesson. The teacher menacingly told the student that he remains lagging behind a couple of days before the exams. Chen was a high school student in the 3rd year of study. He was about to pass entrance exams to the university soon. The guy thought displeasedly that his program was working incorrectly. The teacher strictly told the student that in this state, he would not be able to pass the entrance exams. The man reminded the guy strictly that family members worked in the face field to give him an education. Chen answered the man that the next time this would not happen again. The system told the person that the curse has successfully worked. The protagonist thought joyfully to himself that the program was working again. The main character carefully read the details about himself in the system window. He became interested in the way to increase the characteristics. The teacher came up and put his hand on the shoulder of the protagonist. He told him that he has a chance. The man strictly informed the guy that he supports the teacher's cleanliness with the teacher. No one has ever remained in the 2nd year. Therefore, Chen had to study hard. The students approached and looked displeased at the protagonist. One of the guys said that no one could help such a lagging student. Another guy viciously said that after the release he would engage in physical labor and his future will be hopeless. The main character was scared. He could not be at the same level of cultivation with the rest of the students. Chen thought displeasedly that even after rebirth his life would be worthless again. The system informed the owner about the effect of the curse. A causal relationship was changed. Chen thought with surprise that insults from classmates increased his characteristics. Chen carefully looked around. He decided that he needed to study the system. To begin with, he needed to come up with a reason and run away. The teacher was surprised. The main character abruptly jumped up from his seat and ran to the exit at full speed. The teacher inside the class viciously and loudly called the protagonist by name. Chen went out into the lane near the school. The system told him his indicators in the energy of ki and vital energy. The guy realized that he was getting an increase in characteristics if he relaxes or if he was offended. He decided to experiment with this. The main character decided to himself that he needed to deal with this way to increase the level of internal ki. He remembered the system message in the window. The guy thought that the inner ki is the most important characteristic for the formation of a martial artist. Chen walked along the street and saw a stranger stood in front of him on the road in an embrace with passers-by. The protagonist carefully looked at the girl with an unfamiliar guy. Chen said in a displeased voice that he had just seen the teacher headed in this direction. The stranger waved his hand to the chief hero, said that he would leave here. Chen felt offended. He said that his characteristics increased many times. He shouted to the girl that he would let her go. The demonic stranger turned to the guy and asked, "Was he really talking about her?" The protagonist was surprised to notice how the stranger near the girl was dead. Chena turned around in dismay and told the demoness that he was not going to mock her. The demonic stranger turned around and looked at the protagonist. Chen noticed how the teacher's dead body lay in front of him on the ground. The stranger smiled angrily, smiled at the guy and said that he saw. The girl angrily looked at the guy and said that she was only one once she was a poisonous gas parasite. Such a monster parasitized on the human body and emitted toxic paralyzing gas. The parasite looked at the guy angrily and said that she would enjoy them. The demoness swung and hit the guy with all her might. Chen flew far aside. For the protagonist, the vital energy and internal energy of ki sharply increased. Chen scared to the ground. He thought that the system was a complete detonation. The guy scaredly thought that anyone could deal with him in 2 scores. The protagonist, lying on the ground, thought what kind of damage they give glasses of characteristics. But he did not want to die. Chen thoughtly thought that if his internal organs were destroyed, then it would not be important how much energy he will have. For him, it was necessary to find the method to increase chi energy in order to escape and defeat the monster. The parasite angrily held the guy with her hand and shouted that he was caught. The demoness approached the frightened guy and shouted that she wanted to try him. Chen did not know what to do. The protagonist in fright felt that gas from an unfamiliar girl was poisonous. The guy viciously told the stranger with a long tongue that stinks of her. The girl swung and with all her might hit the frightened guy into the wall. The system said that the owner has increased vital energy. The parasite viciously told the guy that he would sigh her poisonous gas and paralyzes him. The guy screamed scaredly. Green poisonous gas hit his face. Chen suffocated from poisonous green gas he thought he knew. The protagonist thought joyfully to himself that the parasite was led to it. A bright green gas appeared around the guy's body. The system issued a message to the owner about the increase in his indicators. The main character scared and viciously thought to himself that everything was fine with him. After a very strong and sharp poisoning of gas, Chechen fell to the ground. The demoness on top attacked the protagonist and shouted that he would die. Chen felt a surge of strength in the body. He had the opportunity to increase the level of combat skill. He grabbed his opponent's hands with his own hands. A bright shine appeared in the eyes of the protagonist. He shouted that everything worked. The parasite is very angry. She felt that she could not defeat the guy. The main character felt a huge surge of strength in himself. He squeezed his hand into his fist and prepared to attack. Chen with all his might hit his parasite with his foot and she flew high up above him. The demoness was very strongly and mortally amazed at a blow to the protagonist. The main character with all his might hit his rival with a powerful blow. Chen stood near the body of a parasite. He told her angrily that he finally got rid of her. The system told the owner that all the characteristics returned to the initial values. The main character heard some suspicious noise on the side. It was like something exploded. The main character decided not to take risks. He scattered and rushed from the alley at full speed. After half an hour, an unfamiliar girl came up. She looked with surprise at the body of a monster of the parasite on Earth. The stranger looked at the body of the parasite. She realized that in one blow, the demoness could only kill a person with powerful chi. He was a master of martial arts of the 2nd level. The main character ran home into the apartment and shouted to his mother that he had returned. The woman in the kitchen asked the guy with displeasure, "Why did he return so late?" Chen answered her that the evening lesson was taking a little more time today. Mother demanded that the guy call her sister for dinner. The main character was scared in the room. He decided that he needed to inform the police that the monster parasite entered the city. Chen, in surprise, looked in front of him. He noticed how his sister was sitting on the bed. The girl with the phone in her hands looked displeased at the protagonist and asked where he was looking. The main character viciously asked her sister, "Why does she speak in the northeastern dialect?" The girl straightened her clothes and explained to the guy that a new colleague arrived from the northeast of China yesterday. Therefore, she learned several phrases. The sister looked at the protagonist very displeasure. She noticed something on his clothes. The girl asked the guy with displeasure, "Why did he have blood on clothes?" Chena scaredly answered the interlocutor that he had fallen. The main character looked at the girl and told her that it was time to have dinner. The sister jumped to her feet. She cunningly told the main character that the time came to strengthen his health. Chen answered her displeased that he was just going to change clothes. Mother went to the table and put the food. She told the guy and the girl to fly. The main character said joyfully that it smells good and tasty. Chen looked at the table with food. He thought that his mother and sister did not change. Nothing, with the exception of the social environment, has not changed. The protagonist handed the sticks and took a piece of onion in a plate. He threw him into his sister's plate. Chen thought it was very good to have a harmonious family where they love him. The sister handed the main character her plate with rice and said that he needed a lot of nutrients. Mother displeasedly grabbed her children by the head and shouted that she wanted to eat calmly. The main character tried with the help of sticks food from a plate. He really liked her. The system informed the guy that his indicators have decreased. The main character scaredly grabbed his head. He remembered that he had forgotten something. The sister consumed her food with sticks and looked at the guy with displeasure. The girl put a large box on the table. She told the guy that she would not offend him. Brother told her sister that she was chatting a lot. The protagonist looked with great amazement in front of him. He saw something interesting inside the box. The sister sat near the open box. The main character said in amazement that he sees pills that enhance chi energy. Brother asked her sister displeasedly, where did she get the money for such a gift? The girl fell on the floor in surprise. Sister, on a grand scale, hit the guy with a fist on the head and shouted to stop talking stupid things. Chen, in displeasure, asked the interlocutor, where did she get money to buy pills? The girl answered viciously that she had savings. Mother answered her daughter that her brother, even with 10 pills, could not join college. The sister held in her hands a stick for food. She answered the woman that she did not want the guy to repeat her fate. The protagonist remembered with excitement that a couple of years ago, Chen Si became a target in an entrance exam. All of her considered her a non-insignificance. This entailed serious consequences. Chen, with appetite, consumed food and realized that he needed to be stronger to protect his sister. The system informed the surprised owner that he had fallen. Chen thought displeasedly to himself that he accidentally activated the curse again. He lost everything that he earned in 3 days. The girl brought the guy a box. She told him that he could take 1 tablet every day. Chen joyfully answered the interlocutor that she was really his sister. Half an hour later, the guy walked along the street surrounded by people. He held the phone in his hand and thought that he should become stronger and help his sister take revenge. Chen, looking into the phone, he remembered the inhalation of poisonous gas, together with a pill to strengthen ki. This inspired him to new ideas. The guy set a request in the telephone's search engine to reduce the level of cultivation. Chen watched with interest a video from the user on the internet. Someone demanded that they remove online games. The protagonist carefully looked at the video of the woman. She talked about masters of martial arts and their level of cultivation. The man sadly said that the masters of martial arts do not need love. 2 young guys talked on records among themselves. One of them menacingly said that he could not stand Qui energy and did not want it to be inside him. The protagonist once again said a message on the phone about reducing the level of cultivation of the martial arts master. The guy read that an effective method in the form of poison would help him. The substance specifically damages Ki and poisons martial arts. But owning such a substance is a serious crime. The main character read that smoking is considered the main reason for reducing the level of cultivation among martial arts. The protagonist read with interest on the phone and told himself that this method would not be bad for him. Chen went to the store and told the saleswoman that he wants to buy a pack of cigarettes there. The main character stopped in surprise. He carefully studied the saleswoman in the store. The saleswoman slyly looked at the guy and asked if he wanted to buy cigarettes. She handed him a pack. The client with excitement told the saleswoman that he really wants to buy them. The girl got up from her seat and went to the frightened client. The saleswoman grabbed a surprised protagonist for clothes and said that he was still a minor. She advised him to go and cultivate him. The saleswoman turned her back to the guy. She viciously told him to return to school so as not to be late. Chen took out a package of fiery crackers from his pocket. He viciously told the saleswoman that she did not let him buy cigarettes. The protagonist threw the cloaks on fire on the girl. She abruptly ran away. Chen put the money on the table and took a pack of cigarettes. He thanked the saleswoman. The joyful client ran along the street with cigarettes. The girl ran angrily for the guy and screamed after him. The guy ran to a safe distance and sat down to smoke near the stairs. Chen sat near the stairs. A whole bunch of cigarette butts lay on the ground near him. The system told the owner that he received damage from poisonous gas. He has increased Kui energy. The system told the owner that the martial arts master of the 5th level of the graduation class can be considered the best student. Chen was surprised to think that many university graduates own the 1st level martial arts. The protagonist joyfully told himself that in a month at the entrance exams to college he will already be a martial artist of the 1st level martial arts. At this time, the votes of strangers were heard on the side. One of them angrily asked the protagonist, "Who is this?" The unfamiliar bully viciously demanded from the protagonist to leave him the remaining cigarettes. The stranger viciously told the main character that he could be beaten for smoking alone. One of the hooligans threatened the main character that they would bring to him. Another stranger demanded that Chen give them the remaining cigarettes. The protagonist thought displeasedly that school hooligans and Shun and Yes Zhu always took everything from him. Hooligans were not rarely used against him physical violence. Ziyu looked at his friend displeasedly and said that the protagonist has no cigarettes or money. Shun angrily replied that they could always fill the guy's face. He has a whipping bag for them. Shun shouted that this was a good idea. He grabbed the protagonist by the clothes to knock. Chen reacted very quickly. He threw a hooligan away with a powerful blow of his hand. The protagonist viciously told the attackers that he had endured them for a very long time. The guy thought to himself that he had no reason to be afraid of hooligans. Shun looked in fear at the friend lying on the ground unconscious. Tsu was lying without movement. The bully viciously looked at the protagonist and threatened that he would pay him now. Chen glanced joyfully at his hands. He thought that after he smoked a pack of cigarettes, he increased the level of cultivation. Zhu held out his hand forward and rushed to the protagonist. Chen thought with excitement to himself that he already owns the strength of the martial arts of the 3rd level. The main character looked carefully in front of him. He saw a running bully. Shun attacked the opponent with a knife. Chen in time was able to evade and quickly react. The main character carefully looked at the running opponent and noticed all his weaknesses. He saw a lot of shortcomings. Chen sharply swung his hand and hit the running opponent with all his strength. Shun was surprised. He could not understand when the main character became so strong. Chen looked an evil and burning look at the bully. He decided to finish him off. People gathered on the street. They found 2 hooligans and did not understand what happened to them. Tsu and Shun were sitting related to a friend next to each other. On the ground near them lay some note. The main character stood aside. Someone from passers-by shouted that the police needed to call. The main character went into the building. He joyfully told himself that thanks to a pack of cigarettes, his strength increased to the master of the 3rd level. Chen walked along the corridor. He joyfully thought to himself that he was able to kill Shuni and Tsu in a couple of blows. The guy on the move decided to himself that if he gets benefits from toxic substances, he will smoke daily. Chen squeezed his fist and joyfully thought that with great force he could control the winds and call hurricanes. The main character joyfully told himself that after he became a master of martial arts, he will be able to flirt with many handsome. The teacher came up from the side and asked the guy, what would he do? Chen turned around and scaredly asked the teacher, what did he do? The man told the guy that he neglects cultivation. He recalled that the student left his lesson yesterday. The teacher viciously told the chief hero to immediately go to his office. Documents lay on the table. The teacher shouted for the protagonist to gather. The teacher sternly told the main character, so that he would feel the presence of energy in his body. He demanded that the guy activate qi and feel how energy flows inside him. The man strictly reminded the guy that 33 days were left before the entrance exams. He demanded that the main character constantly train, even if he does not go to the university. The teacher promised the guy that he would not leave him. Chen, in a displeased voice, answered the teacher that he would train. The main character stood in a combat rack. The teacher strictly demanded from the guy to accumulate his qi and focus. The teacher praised his student. He said that Chen could increase his qi. Chen looked displeased at the teacher and thought that all this is madness. The system told the owner that he had reduced qi energy. The teacher told the student a joyful voice that in the future, he could become stronger. A message sounded on the speakerphone. All class teachers had to gather students on the sports ground and build them in a line. The main character thought that the oath was beginning. Near the stage stood spectators. The host from the stage said that they turned the most important page in their life. Introductory exams will give everyone the opportunity to demonstrate ambitions. School children stood around the protagonist and laughed at him. The system told the owner that he had increased indicators. Chen was silent and smiled at himself. The system told the guy that he received psychological damage. His strength of mind increased. The main character joyfully listened to ridicule from others. He smiled himself. Chen turned around and shouted that his personal life was his business. The students looked at him in surprise. The main character looked at the evil students. He thought it was very difficult to defeat the crowd. Chen said to himself that the curse would turn back all the harm, which was caused by ridicule and attacks from school children. The protagonist angrily shouted to school children that he would join the debate with them and win. The teacher told the guy to calm down. He explained that now an exemplary student was supposed to speak. At this time, the host shouted to the students to greet the older girl. The main character listened carefully. Chen turned aside and thought with the surprise that that woman was next to him. Xin Bi entered the stage. The presenter said that she was a student at the University of Beijing. The teacher with admiration told the main character that he should take an example with Xin Bi. The protagonist remembered that Xin prevented his sister during the entrance exams. She destroyed her cultivation base. The host shouted to the students to applaud the girl. Xin Chagala on the stage. The student greeted the guests. She wished them all luck and said that she hopes that they would achieve high results. Xin said strictly from the stage to the students that the scum should not be allowed to enter into the university entrance exams. The main character, along with the teacher, stood near the stage and listened carefully. Sin told the guests that bad students are engaged in criminal activity and do not achieve any progress. They also miss classes. The girl from the stage pointed to the protagonist. She said that he is a reflection of his sister C. Then the student explained that the main character will not be accepted to the university. He can quit his studies and get a job in society. The main character was very angry. He viciously asked the girl, "What did she tell him?" The main character stood with other students. They were surprised to listen to the girl on stage. After a small pause, the teacher said frightened that he was to blame for the fact that he did not properly train Chen. The presenter from the stage angrily told the teacher Li that he would no longer defend the student. The presenter from the stage viciously said that Chen is a cancer tumor of the school, and it is necessary to get rid of it. The man explained to the listeners that their school should raise the first-class elite of society like a girl Sin. He explained that there is no need to spend educational resources on parasites like the protagonist. The host joyfully looked at the girl and said that everyone should take an example from her. Everyone around shouts angrily at the protagonist. Li told the guy to be calm. Sin sternly looked at the guy and offered him an option to show himself. The student unexpectedly spat on her shoes on top of the guests. The spit hit the shoes of the student. Around everyone was silent and with interest at it. Sin demanded from the protagonist to fall into her knees in front of her and lick her shoes. In return, she promised for him to write letters of recommendation and issue books. The teacher was very surprised. The protagonist looked angrily and with hatred at the student. Students were very amazed. One of them shouted that all this is too much. Chen thanked his friends for stood up for him. One of the students pointed a finger at the protagonist and called him a discharge. Sin sternly looked at the guy and asked what he wants to tell her. Chen promised the girl that if he loses, then he would bow to her and lick her shoes. The guy demanded that the girl apologize to his sister if he was accepted to the university. The man viciously told the chief hero that he was disrespectful to their best student. He accused the guy that he did not appreciate the reward. The director viciously told the student that he argued with their best student. Sin raised her hand and answered the man that everything was in order. The student told the main character that she agreed on a bet with him. The director joyfully said that the girl made a sacrifice to support Chen. The protagonist looked angrily at the girl and laughed out loudly. The protagonist viciously promised all those present that he would definitely pass the exam and will enter. The saleswoman from the store ran up from the side. She pointed to the policeman to the protagonist. The saleswoman viciously said that Chen stole cigarettes from her store. The policeman promised the interlocutor that he would draw up a protocol for a guy and take care to be processed as soon as possible. The main character was very scared. He screamed loudly and scared. Chen was in the director's office. The teacher thoughtfully told all those present that he did not expect that his student could do this. The policeman thoughtfully said that, taking into account the circumstances, he would recommend to avoid arrest for the guy. The saleswoman said in a dissatisfied voice that she would not sue. The teacher wanted to compensate her to damage. Li waved after the policeman with the girl and asked for forgiveness for the trouble. Sin said in an evil voice that she would win a par ahead of time. She told the main character that if he was excluded, then he will not be allowed to enter into entrance exams. The student suggested that Chen immediately fall into her feet. The teacher promised the director that after they return to school, he will teach a lesson for the protagonist. The director was very angry. He threw some document in a scared main character. Chen carefully read a piece of paper in his hands. He realized that this was an exclusion document. The director told the guy that he was no longer a student. Chen violated the rules seriously, and the nature of his actions was unforgivable. Li, with excitement, promised the director that he compensates for losses on behalf of the protagonist. He asked the leader to give Chen Yu another chance. The main character on the side shouted to the surprised teacher that this is enough for him. The guy began to tear the document with his hands. He told the teacher to not waste time on a prayer. Chen scattered the pieces of paper to the side. He told the teacher that the winner was not yet defined. He promised to succeed in entrance exams. Sin maliciously told the main character that she would be a witness to his failure. A frightened teacher ran into the office. He shouted so that the main character stood still. Chen smiled and told the teacher that he had done enough for him. He thanked him for not having ceased to believe him. The main character told the surprised teacher that he had delivered a lot of trouble for him. The main character turned around and went aside. He promised the teacher that he would always remember him. Li said with surprise that the guy was excluded, and he behaves carelessly. Chen went and felt very dissatisfied. He told himself that he was in trouble. The main character walked along the street. He thought that he had demonstrated determination to students, and in the end he was excluded. He was ashamed to go home. Chen remembered about the student. He realized that he had to quickly find a way to pass entrance exams. The main character approached the store where the already familiar saleswoman worked. The saleswoman, with a smile and sternly, looked at the guy and asked what reason he came to her. The girl looked displeased at the protagonist and called him a thief cigarette. Chen angrily shouted to the interlocutor that because of her he was expelled from school. The saleswoman explained to the guy that she was not going to hold him accountable. The protagonist strictly and tragically explained to the girl that he himself was to blame for everything. The saleswoman extended her hand to the guy and said that she wanted to advise him to several part-time jobs. Chen strictly answered the interlocutor that he would pay with her in another way. He viciously told the girl that because of her, he lost the opportunity to pass entrance exams and change his life. The saleswoman was scared. She told the main character that she was just joking. The main character was angry with his fist on the table. He shouted to the girl that she had destroyed the future of a diligent student. The saleswoman scaredly thought that the future life of the guy would be broken due to a small mistake. The girl turned away and asked the protagonist, "What does he want?" The main character swung and hit his hand against the wall near the girl. He demanded that she find a school for him. He wanted to pass entrance exams. The saleswoman looked scared at the guy and thought that she had acted with him very cruelly. The girl promised the guy that she would come up with something for him. Chen was very happy. The saleswoman viciously looked at the protagonist and explained that she has a prerequisite for him. The girl demanded that the guy get a job at her to work out the debt. The guy thought and imagined how the girl kneel in front of him. The main character thought in surprise that all this could become a reality for him. The next day, the main character was at his work in the store. He was very unhappy. The guy remembered that the girl asked him to look after the store. Chen decided, displeased to himself, that he would never have thought that a new acquaintance would convince him to stay to work. The protagonist felt bad and his coward very much. The guy was unhappy due to the fact that he just agreed. The guy, very scared, thought to himself that he would live in a constant hell and the capitalists would squeeze all the juices out of him. The main character was sitting at the table. He put a bank with a drink on a grand scale. Chen threw his legs on the table and sat with the phone in his hands. He felt very joyful. The main character played joyfully on the phone. He told himself that his energy of ki has grown. It was joyful for him to work in this place to pay the debt. Chen told himself that he is a new generation of purposeful youth. In the game on the phone, the character shouted that you need to gather and attack the tyrant. The game character raised a star in front of him and shouted that they all should fight evil capitalists. Chen angrily and realistically imagined how he would once tie the girl to the street lantern. The main character was completely absorbed in the phone. He did not pay attention to anything. At this time, there was a knock on the door. Someone opened it with his foot and went to the store. Chen viciously turned to the client and told himself that the time had come to work. Shan Pao entered the store. He was a master of martial arts. The protagonist greeted him in the tobacco products of Qing. The client viciously told the guy that he was looking for a guy named Chen Yu. The main character answered the man that he was he. Shan angrily extended a finger to the guy and asked, "Is his name is CHNU?" The main character looked at the client in dismay and confirmed his name to him. The guy looked scared at the evil client and asked what was the matter. Shan said in a displeased voice to the chief hero that he came to buy cigarettes. The beaten students in Shun were scaredly asked that Shan Pao took revenge on them. The man asked the guys who beat them. Students in a frightened voice informed the man that the main character beat them. The man promised the guys that he would deal with the main character. Students bowed to him in gratitude. Shan near the counter demanded from the protagonist to give him a pack of strong cigarettes. Chen found the right pack of cigarettes for the client and handed it to the man. The protagonist told the client that for a pack of cigarettes, he should pay 45,000 yen. Suddenly, the man held out his hand to the guy and regretted her with all his might. The main character was surprised. He scaredly asked a man, "But what's the matter?" The client handed a pack of money to the main character. It was 50,000 there. He added that there is no need. Chen, very scared and displeasedly, asked the man, what did he want to say? Shan tightly squeezed the guy's hand with his hand. He looked at him angrily. The man thought to himself that an ordinary guy of 3rd level could not resist the martial arts of the 4th level martial arts. He imagined how he could crush the guy's hand with his hand. Shan angrily thought that he would crush the protagonist's hand in 3 seconds. Suddenly, the man felt Chen put every effort and twisted his hand to his side. Chen, with excitement, "I will thank the man for the handshake." The client viciously demanded that the guy let him go. The main character used triple horsepower against the opponent. He squeezed his hand even more. Shan felt a very severe pain in his hand. He screamed loudly. Chen joyfully told the man that he gave him 5,000 tips. He still squeezed the client's hand. Sean ran out of the store. He shouted loudly, "What is very painful for him?" The main character shouted after the client to wait. Chen in his hands held a block with cigarettes. He shouted to the client that he had forgotten the purchase. The protagonist carefully looked at the packaging of cigarettes. He decided that the man left them specifically for him. The main character took out a pack of cigarettes from the box. He thanked for them the escaping client. The main character opened the cashier and calculated today's revenue. Chen calculated the money and was surprised to note that he earned more than 73,000 yen. The guy decided to put the money in a reliable place. He opened the cashier and found something inside. Chen looked in surprise and found underwear inside the cash register. The protagonist thought displeasedly that he could have the underwear of his boss. The protagonist remembered the words of the girl. She promised him a reward if he works out the debt. At this time, the boss from behind went to the guy and asked what he dreamed about. Chen, without turning around, replied that it could be very pleasant. The main character turned around in surprise and shouted to the girl that she was returning. The boss was surprised due to the fact that the guy was embarrassed. The girl cunningly wanted to ask the guy. Scared, she asked her what she was doing. The boss grabbed the guy by the clothes. She said that she wanted to show him something interesting in her room. The girl turned and told a friend that he was very boring. Chen asked her, did she find school for him? The boss answered the guy that she could not find school for him. She reminded the employee so that he would not relax before passing entrance exams. The guy joyfully remembered his game on the phone. He told the girl that today's training was fruitful. He confirmed that he worked hard to Cultivation. The boss thought joyfully that the guy is very reliable and responsible. He trained and was engaged in store affairs. The girl held out her hand to the main character and said that the guy is a faithful and obedient slave of the system. She decided to love him greatly in the future. The boss asked the guy if he read today's news report. The girl told the main character that radiation was discovered inside the spatio-temporal gate. As a result, many people died. The interlocutor warned that the protagonist would not go to that area. The main character joyfully thought to himself that a dangerous area would be a good place for him for training. The next day, the main character arrived at the place of a dangerous area. Chen said with surprise to himself that he is located near the spatial gate of the city of Qing. He saw people out inside. The main character stood in a battle suit. He was surprised and did not expect that such advanced technologies could be in this world of martial arts. According to rumors near the spatial temporal gates of the city of Qing, there was the highest level of mortality. Scientists and warriors ran inside the large room. Due to the great danger, the number of martial arts masters who came in search of treasures decreased. From the inside of the gate, several beaten warriors came out. They contained very strong radiation in themselves. Those who went inside did not return back. On the table lay a wounded warrior. The main character thought that people continue to go through the gate, and this means that there are some extraordinary treasures inside. The protagonist looked angrily at the warriors and told himself that he would never become one of them. The scientist asked the guy if he wanted to enter the gate. He said that the protagonist show the necessary caution and ensure his safety. The guy looked in surprise at the red switch in his chest. The scientist told the guy to turn the key to activation of protection against radiation in a suit. Chen answered the man that he understood everything. He turned his hand and turned on the switch on his chest. The protective field was successfully activated. Chen got the opportunity to approach the spatio-temporal gate. Chen very boldly stepped and headed inside the gate. The scientist from behind wished him good luck. The main character sharply stepped over the gate and ended up in another room. Chen looked forward in front of him and said that he was ready to go. The main character was inside the large room. Everything looked for him, as if he was inside the space station. Chen unexpectedly felt as if he had been faded all over his body. The main character could not stand and began to fall to the floor. He did not understand what was happening. Chen fell to the floor. He felt a very severe cutting pain in his body. His head was spinning. The man scaredly asked the guy if he was all right. The woman displeasedly told the main character that he should not have entered the gates if he had weak qi. The main character exhaustedly fell to the ground and shouted that he was hard because of the power of radiation. Chen felt how very difficult he was. In his body he was greatly struck by radiation. The protagonist felt how, due to the overload, his heart pounded very much. The protagonist shouted, very frightened, his eyes brightly lit up. The man shouted that the guy needs to help return. Chen could die in this place. The woman displeasedly told the main character that if he was weak, then he would not come here. The system told the owner that he received damage from deadly radiation. He has increased indicators. Chen jumped up and joyfully shouted that in the future, he would certainly become stronger and smarter than the rest. The system told the owner how much its different indicators increased. Chen joyfully fled to the side. Chen stood in the corridor. He said that as the spatial gate moves, radiation will gradually increase. None of the martial arts masters dare to go too far. The guy looked scared in front of him and saw the dark gate. He thought that the radiation power in this place is even higher. The protagonist thought with excitement that he feels the intensity of the radiation source more strongly. The guy was not sure whether his body could withstand such a powerful radiation without damage. Chen ran along the corridor. He was not worried due to the fact that he could suffer. The guy raced at full speed. He thought that he should achieve progress in cultivation. The main character stood near the gate of the compartment. There was not a soul around. Chen thought that no one should have noticed him in this place. Chen rested his hand against the gate and said joyfully that in this place he would be baptized with a curse. The main character looked at the room joyfully. He decided to demonstrate his skills in this room of the space base. Chen held out his hand to his chest and prepared to turn off the red switch. The main character told himself with the excitement that he would turn off the protective field. He turned the switch. The guy shouted loudly and very much. A strange feeling appeared in his body again. Chen looked around. After disconnecting the protective field, radiation began to envelop everything around. Such radiation came into contact with the body. Chen shouted a frightened and weakening voice that this sensation is a form of transcendence. The main character smiled through his own strength and said that all this was evolution. 3 hours later, the protagonist fell exhausted to his knees on the floor. Chen sat on the floor and said that for him, everything is a buzz. He no longer suffered from radiation. The main character joyfully closed his eyes. He imagined as if the girls had done a massage. Chen smiled to himself and thought that his massage invigorates and removes toxins from his body. The guy stepped aside. He thought to himself that he spent most of the day when he trained here. He decided to return to the store. Chen looked into the system window and noticed that his main indicators improved significantly. The main character suddenly heard some kind of noise on the side. He turned around in surprise. The girl in a combat suit swung with all her strength and hit the warrior's foot. The guy swung and launched steel blades against his rival. The girl very quickly dodged in time. The blades flew past her. After that, the girl swung and tried to attack her opponent with her foot. The fighter blocked her blow. The guy bounced back after the attack. He said that the girl is very experienced. But Huan Yao viciously looked at the fighters and asked who they were. A warrior with blonde hair looked at the girl and viciously said that they would answer her superficially. The guy looked strictly Yao and said that she was the young lady of the Bahuan family. The fighter ordered his subordinates to grab the girl and resell her at a good price. A guy with green hair shouted to the girl that she would now recognize the horror of their group Levy. The girl was not afraid. She sharply jumped and hit the attacked guy with her foot on the face. After the blow, Yao shouted to the fighter that she would remember about Levy's group. The boss commanded the subordinate to bring down all the power to his rival and go on the attack. The boss strictly ordered his subordinate to concentrate. The girl swung sharply and hit the attacked guy with all her might. The boss was very angry. He looked at the girl with great hatred. The boss angrily ran to the girl from behind to unexpectedly attack her. The guy swung his hand and hit the girl behind. She remained to stand on her feet. The boss was very amazed and surprised. He did not understand what had happened. Yao jumped up. She shouted to the opponent so that he would not underestimate the Bahuan family. The girl in flight swung her foot and hit the guy with all her might. He flew to the side. The fighter lay on the ground and raised his head. He said in a strict voice that the girl was really from the Bahuan family. The beaten boss told himself that he felt everything in his own skin and appreciated the girl's abilities. Yao stood and looked with excitement at the boss. He reminded his opponent about Levy group members. The girl felt weak in the body and fell to the ground. Boss angrily shouted to her about hidden weapons. The guy angrily shouted to the girl that her protective suit was damaged. The boss told the girl that before her entertaining at the gate, her protective suit was changed. When Yao puts power to attack, it damages her suit. The guy held out his hand to the girl. He shouted angrily to her that he would have fun with her and then sell it. A stranger appeared on the side. He grabbed the boss's hand and shouted to stop and would not touch the girl. The stranger told boss that the girl is young and innocent. Yao raised her head and asked the guy who he was. Yao lay on the ground and looked at the stranger. She angrily asked the guy who he was. The girl was lying and saw a weakening look in front of her, the outlines of the warrior. The protagonist won the guy by the hand and told him that this would not be appropriate for the warrior. The fighter asked the protagonist with surprise and discontent. "Who is this?" Chen angrily looked at the opponent and said that he would answer his question. The main character did not have time to evade the attack. The opponent hit his hand on his face. Chen grabbed his face by the face and realized that the opponent had held a good hidden attack against him. He shouted that now his turn to beat. The protagonist swung his foot in the flight and tried to hit the opponent. The system told the owner that he had increased blood damage. The guy missed another blow. The stranger viciously told the chief hero that he was a master of martial arts of the 2nd level. He added that he was not just to cope with such an opponent as Chen. The main character jumped up and swung his left foot to attack against the opponent. The fighter called the protagonist garbage and hit his face with all his might. Chen scaredly thought that all his defense was out of order. The protagonist's eyes lit up. He used a reception against the opponent called Axel. Chen missed another strong blow to the face. He told himself displeasedly that he did not need to say that. The main character missed another blow. The system told the owner that he had increased blood damage. The fighter got angry. He was unhappy due to the fact that he fell into the protagonist, but he did not fall. He remembered that Chen had come here alone. The stranger stood at a distance. He asked the protagonist, "Why is that one?" Chen, in a proud voice, told the opponent that he wants to find wings. The fighter was very surprised. He decided that his opponent had a problem with his head. The boss turned to the side. He shouted to 2 subordinates so that they would not pretend. The leader ordered his subordinates to approach him. He demanded that the fighters pick him up. His opponent was not so simple. The boss stood in the combat rack. He prepared with other fighters to finish off the protagonist. The leader, along with subordinates, launched dark green lightning against the guy. The main character, in fright, felt the dark lightning struck his body. The guy shouted loudly. He grabbed his hand by the switch on his chest. The system told him his current indicators. Chen felt much better. He felt that he was very cool. The fighters were very justified. The boss shouted that the guy's internal organs quickly deplete and his mental state will worsen. Chen began to fall to the ground. The enemy shouted to him that very soon he would lose his senses and become a vegetable. The main character maliciously told the fighters that he would come to his senses in a couple of minutes. The boss angrily shouted to the subordinate to the main character that they would break him now. The system told the owner that he had changed indicators. The protagonist was attacked by dark lightning. The leader folded his hands and shouted to the fighters to put all their strength to blow up the guy. The main character shouted loudly after the attack by lightning. He felt good. The fighters continued to attack the opponent. The main character fell exhausted to the ground. He said in a weakening voice that he was not all yet. Chen, lying on the ground, called the weak in the voice of his rivals and morons. Boss angrily looked at the protagonist and shouted that soon they would end him. The leader angrily threatened the main character that he would now tear his head off. A bright red glow appeared near his hand. The main character used a hidden attack against the opponent. He hit the boss with a fist from below. The leader was badly injured after the blow. The fighters called him in dismay. The main character swung sharply and with all his might hit his opponent with his fist on his face. Chen jumped up and began to attack the opponent on all sides by hand and legs. The main character looked at the beaten fighters and said that he was bored with them. The girl lay on the side and carefully watched everything that was happening. The main character sat down on the body of the lying boss and decided to see what he has with him. Chen took out a fighter's card and cash in the amount of 4,000. The main character grabbed the girl in his arms and told her that he should send him back. Scientists were very scared when they saw the girl in the arms of the guy. Someone shouted that a doctor from the Bahuan clan was needed. Yao lay on a stretcher. The main character carefully followed her. On the side, one of the scientists shouted that it was necessary to report to the medical department. You cannot allow an error to occur. The main character mentally wished the girl good luck and decided to go about his business. The guy took off his protective suit. He told himself that he was redeemed in radiation and will become even stronger. The system told the owner that due to mortal radiation, he had risen indicators. The main character stood inside the hall and shouted that he would become smarter and stronger than everyone. The guy glanced joyfully at the body and shouted that each time he was becoming more and more inflated. The main character swung and hit his fist. He said that he had to hit quickly. The main character looked at his hand in surprise and noticed that he had blood from his nose. Chen himself thoughtfully said to himself that his body could no longer bear so many tides. His body can only partially withstand radiation. The guy on the move threw a suit and ran. He shouted that it was time to finish. He decided to leave the secret kingdom. Chen ran to the cleaning room from radiation and went inside. The employee went to the guy and said that he would take off his clothes. It was necessary to clean the particles of radiation from his body. The protagonist took off his outer clothing. The workers around very much admired his body. The girl looked admiringly at the guy and said that he had a physique, as if a sculpture. The employee told the main character that he should also take off his underwear. Chen felt heated and closed him with his hands. He was not sure whether it was necessary to take all the clothes. The main character was on the service square. There were many people around. Chen said in a joyful voice to himself that he was in a real paradise. The girls around with admiration looked at the body of the protagonist. They told him compliments. The girl looked slyly at the guy and offered him a massage lesson. The protagonist thought about himself, about the teacher, and the student displeasedly. The main character turned around and told the girls that extracurricular activities in massage are prohibited. The employee shouted after the guy that classes were free and would not take money from him. The protagonist thought displeasedly to himself that he was in vain refused massage lessons. The guy walked along the corridor and thought about himself with displeasure that the radiation check was carried out once a week. The main character stood near the entrance to the training room. There were two strangers from behind him. The athletes viciously looked at the protagonist. One of them said that Chen got into the list of deductions before the exam. The system told the owner that he had increased indicators. The strangers looked angrily at the protagonist and continued to insult him. Chen bowed to strangers and took them by the hands. He said that he wants to ask for advice from them. The main character, along with new acquaintances, went into the training room. A lot of athletes trained inside. The fighter ran to the gong and hit him with all his might. There was a loud ringing. The electronic board showed that the power of a warrior was 0-2. The guy made every effort and said merrily to himself that he had not even been half overnight. The athlete cunningly invited the main character to make a bet. Chen was very scared. The athlete suggested checking him an indicator of his strength. The loser will have to run 3 circles naked. The main character was very unhappy when he heard about the conditions of the dispute. Chen smiled at his partner and said fun that the conditions are very piquant. The main character swung and hit the gong with all his might. The scoreboard showed the level of power to 0-3. The athletes were surprised. They did not believe that this was possible. The athlete held the gong in his hands. He shouted displeasedly that the equipment was broken, and he wanted to make sure he himself. The protagonist smiled angrily, smiling, and said that he was more careful. Chen swung with his hand and hit with all his might on the hound in the hands of a frightened athlete. The guy was very surprised when he saw that the scoreboard in the gong showed 0-68. Chen turned to a frightened athlete and said that now his turn is to check his strength. The athlete was very scared. He closed his hand and shouted to the guy to wait. The main character, with all his might, swung his fist to knock on the athlete. People in the gym looked at a fight and could not understand what happened there. The athletes were very surprised. They looked scared at the protagonist. After the battle, 2 athletes naked were connected and sat near the tablet. The main character approached his work store. He said in a joyful voice that he should not have problems with admission. Chen realistically imagined how Sinbi in front of him would fall to his knees. Chen climbed onto the roof of the store's entrance and joyfully looked out the window inside. The guy opened the window and shouted joyfully that all the girls should bow to his feet. The main character was very surprised. He saw through the window that someone was in the room. The boss lay on the bed and cunningly asked the frightened guy, was he really saying something about admiration? Chen turned around in dismay and shouted to the girl that he did not want to say that at all. The main character could not resist the windowsill and began to fall inside the room. Chen lay next to the girl. The boss asked him with interest, did he really come here to love her? The main character next to the girl told her that he is very good in bed. The boss took off your outer clothing and shouted to the guy that they had nothing to wait. Chen was very scared and wanted to run away. The main character scaredly ran out through the door of the room. He shouted to the girl that he should go. The boss slyly looked after the guy and said that he was only a young man. The girl went out to the store and menacingly told the guy that she would still ask about him. The main character behind the counter apologized to the boss and wished her a happy journey. The guy opened the store cashier and began to count the money there. The protagonist calculated that he had 4,000 for 4 packs of cigarettes. He decided to challenge the immunity again. Chen held in his hands a whole armful of smoking cigarettes and smoked them. The system told the owner that he had increased indicators. Chen continued to smoke more and more. Gradually, the smoke of cigarettes began to climb the room and hit the sensor. The fire alarm worked. Water poured on top of the protagonist. Inside the large building, a subordinate with a report came to the boss office. The guy fell in front of boss in his office and scaredly said that the plan to abduct a girl from the Bawan family was failed. An angry leader in glasses grabbed a gun and directed him to the guy. He shot him and shouted that place in hell. The main character sat in a chair with a book in his hands near the phone. He heard someone called him. Mother, in a very cunning voice, told her son that his sister was getting married. The protagonist abruptly jumped up from the chair. He shouted that his sister was a monster and could not understand who could bear the character of the girl. Suddenly, some guest came to the head of the guy. Mother asked him, "What did he want to say?" The main character disappointedly said that his sister wants to marry the statue of Buddha. Mother viciously shouted to her son to return home as soon as possible. Suddenly, there was a very loud knock on the door of the main character's house. The man next to the girl kneeling, he told his mother that Wen will be in reliable hands. The main character broke into the apartment. He shouted that he did not agree with the marriage. The man, along with the girl, was surprised to turn to the protagonist. Wen told the groom that her brother was still very young. Chen picked up the cups. He said angrily to the girl that he has a couple of questions for the future Shuren. The main character looked angrily at the guest and asked his name and age. The man viciously said that his name is Van Shude, and he was 34 years old. The main character looked at the guest strictly and said that he was asking him ordinary questions. Van said that he has several apartments in elite complexes as well. He owns several cars. He promised the main character that his sister would not need anything. Chen angrily asked the guest what attracted him to the girl. Van shouted with great desire that he was very attracted by the personality of the girl and her figure. Van was sitting on a chair, thoughtfully said that the girl's tenderness also attracted him. Chen listened displeasedly. The main character angrily shouted to the man that he had to shave his beard. Chen put his hand on the man's shoulder and said that he could not approve the marriage. An evil sister with a frying pan in her hands stood behind him. Sister angrily hit the protagonist with a frying pan on the forehead. The man headed for the exit. He said in a frightened voice that he didn't like the girl so already. The beaten protagonist told the bath that he would wait for the same attitude from the girl in marriage. Wen grabbed the protagonist's hand by the ear and pulled him along. The sister looked angrily at the protagonist and asked what he was thinking about. Chen asked the interlocutor, did she really like the man? Wen turned around and told the main character that she needed money and their whole family. The main character looked at his sister and suddenly told her that he agreed. Chen joyfully waved his hands and shouted to the surprised man that he was approved by marriage. Wen looked in surprise at his brother. She did not expect consent from him. Chen grabbed a frightened man into a hug and pulled him for a walk. The main character, along with his companion, arrived at the large building. It was the center of massage of the legs. The man asked the guy, why did he bring him to the center of massage? Chen answered his partner that he wanted to go here for a long time, but it was a little expensive. He ran to the client, to the administrator. He said that he had not seen Mr. Wang here for a long time. Van told the main character that he was in front of him of the director of the center for massage of the legs. He had always come with some customers before. The guy answered the man with a smile that he believes him. The director spoke with the client on the move. The main character walked joyfully ahead. The director ran into the room and shouted to the girls that they had a newcomer here. The worker joyfully jumped into the arms of Van. There was a frightened director behind her. Van viciously and with great desire looked at the girls and laughed slyly. Van told the owner of the institution that now is not the right time. The director slyly said that the girl has only a couple of sips to lose consciousness. The man took out a pack of money. He said in a joyful voice that he wants to make his brother happy today. Nearby on the couch was the main character. On the table opposite stood a bottle of alcohol. 3 girls smiled joyfully to customers and thanked them for the parish. Chen was delighted. He said quietly to the future Shuren that the girls are very good. The worker slyly told the main character to drink with her. She asked her in bewilderment, "Where is the alcohol?" The girl pointed to her chest and told the surprised guy that alcohol is there. Chen very quickly drained the contents of the glass. The worker was admired next to him. The girls continued to offer the guy to drink from all sides. The system told the guy that he had increased indicators due to alcohol consumption. Chen, with a glass in his hands with interest, asked Shuren, "How much did he drink?" Van was surprised due to the fact that the guy was still sober. Van took the money from his pocket and threw it on the table. He shouted that he was giving another 30,000 to drink. Chen was surprised because of such generosity. The main character was filled with alcohol. He thought he had fun enough. Van kept the girls on his knees. He shouted to them that the night was just beginning. The man threw his outer clothing aside. He shouted to the girls that he was going to them. There was a bottle of alcohol on the table. On the phone was lying nearby. On the phone there was an online video broadcast. On the internet. All users watched Vana. The police arrived and arrested Van. The officer told the man that he was arrested for spreading a love video. Chen sadly stood on the street and wished Shuren a happy journey. The main character stood in a store near the window. He said in a tired voice to himself that he was tired. Chen asked the boss in surprise, "What would be for benefits when hiring?" The girl answered the guy that his problem with the educational institution was resolved. The main character scaredly asked the girl, "Where is he going now?" The boss extended her leg to the guy and invited him to think about payment. The main character looked at the girl and joyfully thought that she was giving hints. Chen was very happy about himself. He thought that all this was God's gift. A large truck drove up to the store. The driver asked the guy to sign for the goods. Chen held a large box in his hands. He told the driver that many packages with cigarettes were received. The protagonist joyfully looked after the leaving the driver and wished him a happy journey. At this time, 3 strangers appeared behind the guy. One of the fighters confirmed to the boss that they were in front of them. The boss looked aside and shouted to the fighters to stop. The main character heard the noise behind. The mercenaries became a threatening pose and shouted that they were a team of murders of Meta. The main character looked in surprise to the side. He did not understand who it was opposite him. The fighter sternly said that in the secret kingdom, their abduction plan was failed. Chen left their brother cripple. The girl invited her boss to go to the tobacco store and put an end to all this. The boss angrily told the girl that they should capture the guy alive. The main character stood opposite the mercenaries and looked at them with surprise. Boss in dismay asked the guy, did he really eavesdropped on their secrets? Chen looked scared at the fighters and said that he really overheard them. The main character scaredly shouted to the strangers that they wanted to cripple him. The mercenaries accelerated and rushed to the guy. They shouted that he would die. The main character in the lane with powerful blows scattered mercenaries around. The beaten fighters were lying around. The boss told the main character that they were mistaken about his rank of martial arts. The boss scaredly told the guy that there was not a drop of hatred in him. But he beat them anyway. The main character needed his hands. One of the mercenaries said that Chen had the 8th rank, and therefore the organization wanted to get rid of it. The boss in displeasure asked the protagonist, where did the person with the 8th rank come from? The boss got angry. He shouted to the main character that he wanted to deceive him. The mercenary shouted to the guy that they belonged to Leri. This company owns a fitness club and real estate, and is engaged in retail trade. The beaten boss told the main character that they wanted to capture the heiress of the Bahuan family. The organization sent mercenaries to capture the protagonist. Chen angrily told the fighter that he should obediently follow him in Leri. The boss angrily threatened for the protagonist that if he himself was saved, then his mother and sisters will be able to reach. The mercenary viciously asked the protagonist what could happen to his mother and sister. The boss explained to the guy that the company could make a family of 3 people disappear. Chen was very scared. He looked angrily and strictly at the mercenary. An employee ran into the police department. He shouted to the boss that the trouble happened. The officer asked the subordinate, what happened? The policeman scaredly pointed to the street. On the street near the pillar were tied bandits. In the voice recorder, I played a record. The boss repeated on the record that they were from Leri, and they are also shareholders of the secret kingdom. The police listened to the record from the recorder on the pillar. The boss told details about their abduction and sale of the heiress of the Bakian family. Chen walked down the street and looked in front of him. He did not expect him to fall into such troubles. The protagonist stood near the entrance to Leri. He decided to take measures and get rid of this company. No one dared to threaten his family. Chen thought to himself that he would use the money that he had obtained in a secret kingdom. The guy also decided to use tens of thousands that he received from Van. A man with a cigarette and greeted a guy. He asked the client if he wants to lay something or buy. The main character extended the document to the man and asked if he had anything from this list. The manager carefully studied the list. He was very surprised. The man looked angrily at the protagonist and said that access to the black market was open to him. The subordinate approached the boss's office and said that all the fighters who were supposed to catch the protagonist ended up in a police station. The leader viciously looked at the subordinate and said that he knew people who would decay everything. The boss with a cigarette said in displeasure that his subordinates could not even cope with some kind of boy. The leader ordered the subordinate so that the mercenary of the 2nd rank is sent for the family of the protagonist. A fighter with a tray came up from the side. He told boss that the wine was ready and he could try it. The fighter poured wine from a jug into a glass. The leader wanted to tell his subordinates why he prefers red wine. The leader looked into the glass at the wine. He said in an evil voice that it reminds him of the blood of the haters. The boss tilted a glass of wine. He said strictly that some guy could not prevent him from grabbing a girl from the Bahuan family. He threatened that he would drink blood from the guy's body. Suddenly, the boss spat out the wine. He did not like it very much. The leader viciously asked the subordinate, "Why did the wine have such a disgusting taste?" The servant frightenedly said that this elite red wine was discovered only today. The leader was very angry. The servant threw the countess aside and promised that he would figure it out. Suddenly there was a very strong explosion. The door flew out and nailed the servant. The boss, along with the subordinates, looked fearfully as the door struck one of the servants. A stranger's profile appeared in the doorway. He viciously asked the leader what was the matter. Chen angrily asked the leader, was he really not to taste? The leader viciously looked at the protagonist. He said that the guy himself came to their doors. The main character cheerfully told the bandits that he is now at their service. Chen viciously glanced at the boss and asked if there was a tasty wine for him. The boss got angry. He shouted to the main character that he fed the elite red wine. The bandits rushed from all sides at the protagonist to grab him. Chen took out a gas can and began to poison the bandits around them. The leader viciously shouted to the guy that with such abilities he also dared to defend the girl. Chen held in his hands a spray can with high concentrated gas. The protagonist turned the can and sent a stream of gas to his face. The system told the owner that he had activated a temporary improvement in vision. Chen threw the can to the side and shouted to the bandits that they could attack. The leader strictly ordered his subordinates to grab the guy. The bandits from all sides ran to the main character to grab him. Chen swung and hit with all his might a hand in the stomach of one of the attackers. The protagonist swung and knocked on one of the attackers. Chen swung and with all his strength hit the bandit's hand on the side. He thought to himself that first-level workers are very easy to knock on. The leader scaredly told the guy that he could not be, that he was a simple high school student. Chen stood, and the bodies of bandits were lying around him. He told the leader that he is a good person. The main character held out his hand back and grabbed the blade behind his back. Chen jumped up and prepared to attack the opponent with a blade from above. The leader of the frightened warned the protagonist that he would pay a high price for his murder. The main character received a very strong blow on the side. He did not have time to finish the boss. Chen looked angrily aside. He did not understand who dared to interfere with him. An unfamiliar fighter appeared on the side. The boss joyfully shouted that the defender had finally arrived, and the money was not spent in vain. Chris was a fighter of the 3rd rank. He asked for forgiveness from the boss for his expectation. The main character swung a blade and shouted to the fighter that he would chop him now. Chris swung and hit the protagonist with all his might, After a powerful blow from the opponent, Chen jumped up in the air and fell to the ground. The fighter looked at the lying protagonist. He said that everything was confused in him. The boss shouted to Chris that this year he would receive a lot of bonuses. The fighter viciously told the main character that he was very brave if he came to Leri alone. The fighter held out his hand and grabbed the deed of the protagonist. He told the guy to stop fantasizing. Chris explained to the guy that there is a very big difference between them. The leader praised the fighter and demanded that he hold the guy. The boss held out the gun and prepared to shoot at the protagonist. The boss prepared to shoot at the guy. He noticed that Chen dodged aside. The main character took out a grenade. He threatened the boss that they would now fly into the air. The leader held the gun near the guy's head. Chris said that Chen could let go of a grenade. The main character activated the grenade and a very bright explosion was heard. Everything around was illuminated. The leader bounced back and closed his hands. He shouted that it was a light bomb. Chris viciously promised the guy that he would kill him. The system told the owner that he had increased all the indicators due to damage from bright light. Chen grabbed his sword. He said joyfully that even a person is afraid of light bombs. The fighter stood and covered his face with his hands. The main character swung from below to hit him with a sword. At this time, the girl stood in the kitchen and cooked food. She cut the sausage. The worker was standing near the table. She told herself to herself that the guy has been trying very much lately. In a tobacco store, he helped a lot. The girl stood near the table. She decided to make a dish of fried eggs and fried intestines for dinner. Chris, after a blow from the protagonist, shouted very loudly and lingeringly. An angry fighter swung to impress the protagonist with his hand. Chen sharply bent down and prepared to attack the opponent from below with his hand. The girl was in the kitchen and cooked food. She broke an egg for the pan. The worker smiled broadly for herself and cooked food in a pan. The leader looked aside and was very scared when he saw Chris lying on the floor unconscious. The leader was sitting on the floor. He viciously shouted that he had spent a lot of money, but in reality he paid only a non-me. The main character approached the boss and said that he threatened his family, and now the only way out is the death of the leader. The boss scaredly informed the guy that he recognizes his mistake and wants to become a good person. The main character looked at the leader for a very long time. He thought for a long time what to do with him. After a small pause, Chen closed his eyes and told boss in displeasure that he agreed to have mercy on him. The main character turned around and went aside. He shouted to boss that he would give up the thought of atrocities in the future. The guy left the room. The boss was still on the floor on his knees. The leader looked angrily after the guy. He shouted angrily that he would kill his family. Chen shouted to the man that he changed his mind. He threw his direction and grenade. The leader was very scared when he saw a grenade in front of him. He decided to try to escape. The boss ran very quickly around the room. A grenade flew from his side. The man at full speed jumped out the window to protect himself from a grenade. The boss joyfully thought that he was saved. He decided that it was not so easy to kill. The leader forgot that he was on the 33rd floor, and he jumped out of the window. The man was scared. He realized that he was falling from a very high height. The main character stood in the room and heard from the street the cries of the falling boss. The guy viciously told himself that the man was an idiot of the company's boss of Leri. The guy joyfully said that the man was afraid of toys. On the floor lay a plastic toy grenade. The protagonist climbed to the second floor of the tobacco store. There the girl was waiting for him. The boss was sitting at the table opposite the guy. There was a lot of food in front of them. The girl told the partner that 10 more days were left before the entrance exams. Chen held out his sticks to take food. He told the boss that there would be no problems. The main character suddenly dropped a glass of wine. The drink hit the girl on clothes. The boss put her hand to the body. She told the guy that she was very hot. Chen was worried. He shyly handed the girl a rag so that she won. The boss looked slyly at the guy and offered him a love award if he acted. The main character dismissed the girl. He said that he did not want to participate in gambling. The boss extended her hand to the guy and promised to help him find some beauty. The protagonist was dreaming. He introduced himself in the arms of the boss. Chen joyfully thought to himself that the bet was not very high. He decided to agree. The girl looked at the guy with a smile and explained that she herself was a beauty. The main character strictly raised his finger up and said that this idea is not very good. The girl sat on the table. She told the main character that she would really like him to go somewhere. The guy walked with a colleague in the evening forest. They approached the big tree. The girl said that before she had never dared to come here. The boss looked around and said thoughtfully that all this reminds her of a lot. The girl remembered about her acquaintance guy. At the entrance stage, they were not yet familiar. The girl said that they and a friend entered one institution and studied the same subjects. The bride and groom was destined to grow together. They had a bright wedding. The guy gobbled up a large monster and he did not survive. The girl looked at it in dismay. The girl stood near the tree and laid a hand on him. She said in a sad voice that she could have children along with her friend. Then they would go to school and then to the university. The protagonist thought sadly that the boss treated him as a son. Therefore, she helps him with admission. The main character promised a surprise girl that he would not let her down. He said that he would pass all the tests and will do. The boss looked scared at the guy and asked if this was correct. The girl stood next to the main character near a large tree. The guy stood next to his colleague. He decided to tell her something. Chen slyly smiled at the interlocutor and promised that he would take care of her. The boss displeasedly told the main character that she was not so frivolous. Chen, in a menacing voice, shouted to the interlocutor that he would take care of her as his own mother. The girlfriend clasped the hand of the protagonist and invited him to go to one place to relax there. Chen, along with their companion, came to a large building. They went inside the room. The guy shouted to his girlfriend that he did not want to go inside. His boss dragged his clothes and shouted that he should know all the charms. The director appeared. He greeted the protagonist by name and asked how he would have fun today. The boss was surprised. She asked the protagonist. Was he really familiar with the director? Chen tried to make excuses and shouted that he was not familiar with a man. The guy angrily asked the man why he called him by name. The director was afraid of scared. The angry girl ran up behind and knocked the heads of the protagonist and director. The main character told the man that he was an honest guy and could not go to such places. A group of girls ran up from the side. They all greeted a frightened guy by name. The angry boss looked viciously at the girls and said that they also had the four express the guy. Workers began to make excuses. They could not work today. The main character told his companion that he will have a child at home today. He needs to be at 8 hours at home. The boss told the guy that she wants to look at his child. Chen, in a frightened voice, explained to the interlocutor that he came here not of his own free will. He wanted to train skills. The boss angrily asked the guy where he ran and why did he do this with his mother. Chen, on the move, scared, shouted to the girl that he just needed to leave. On late evening, people gathered near the forest near the mountain. Predatory monsters with burning eyes went down from the mountain and looked at two people. The wounded guy asked the girl in dismay, "What should they do?" Sin answered the partner that the animals gathered in a circle. Therefore, they have little time and possibilities. The guy invited the interlocutor to return and report everything. The girl asked the satellite, would he really not be able to cope? The fighter displeasedly asked Sin, does she really want him to act on its own? The interlocutor answered him that the news about the beasts should be distributed. The girl went from behind and laid her hand on the guy's shoulder. She reminded him that the end of the warrior should be death in battle. The fighter scaredly told the interlocutor that they still have a chance of salvation. The girl from behind told the guy that all this would reduce the likelihood of success during a breakthrough. The fighter fell to the ground. He shouted to the girl to escape and run away from here. The companion angrily looked at the guys and said that humanity would remember his victim. The girl jumped up sharply and took off. Around the guy poured stones. He closed his head with his hands. The girl flew high above the ground. Predatory animals ran in the valley. In parting, the companion said goodbye to her friend. Evil animals stood on the ground with burning eyes. The guy turned on a bright green mark on his back. He said displeased that the girl set him up. The girl flew at high speed above the ground. She shouted to herself that many people in the city of Qing would be grateful to the guy. At this time, predatory animals rushed into the cave. An important meeting took place inside the government of the city of Qing. The leader told the participants at the table that Sin Bi is the best student of their university. He did not understand how the student could simply disappear in the city. The man viciously told the partners that 3 course were found through the Chera of the day. The man at the table scaredly said that the last place before the disappearance of the Sin group was very dangerous. At this time, there was a strong blow to the door. A tired girl entered the room. The student looked very beaten. The clothes on it were torn. People at the table scaredly jumped up and asked the girl, where did she come from and why was blood on her? Sin told his partners with a sad voice that she, along with her group, studied strange animals outside the city. Only she survived. The student grabbed her hair with her hand and said that there was a goal for wild animals. Blood spots appeared on the floor. The girl frightenedly told the partners that the goal of animals are the city of Qing. The chairman was surprised to listen to the student. The girl said that her team went deep into the danger zone. They received a lot of information necessary. Sin looked at the man and said that she needed to declare an alarm throughout the city. They must be ready to stand up for themselves. 5 minutes ago, the main character was inside the building with karaoke. The girl was sitting in a chair and focused and joyfully sang some song. The guy looked at the boss and thought that her figure was good. The main character, along with other girls, sat on the couch and shut their ears. They did not like the singing of the boss. The girl held a bottle in her hands. She asked the audience, how did they like her singing? Chen, with a smile, glanced at the interlocutor and said that talent is not so important. The worker was scared, hid behind the guy. Chen told the boss that he liked her singing. At this time, there was some kind of noise. The boss said with excitement that the city was introduced into combat readiness. The main character was very scared. He decided to quickly run away with his colleague. Chen thought to himself that when the animals would arrive in this place, the city would clearly not say goodbye. The girlfriend pulled the protagonist by the hand behind him. She shouted that they needed to leave. There were many cars and people in the center of the street. The main character looked at the crowd of citizens and realized that residents want to warn about danger. The policeman shouted into the loudspeaker so that people would save a weaker part of the population. On the street, the man grabbed his daughter and wanted to put her in the car. The girl called her mother in dismay. A guy ran down the street. The old woman waved his hand behind him. The policeman said that the warriors were preparing weapons above the first rank. They needed to win the time. The girlfriend grabbed the protagonist by the head of the protagonist and asked what he was standing. The boss put the guy in a taxi and said that the driver would take him to a safe place. The girl slammed the car door. The guy remained inside the cabin of the car. Chen asked the girl from the window of the car, "Where is she running?" The interlocutor shouted to him that she was heading to the eastern wall. The girl ran through the crowd and remembered for herself about the warriors of the first rank. They had to take part in resistance. A taxi car rushed along the street. A frightened girl was sitting in the back seat and the main character next to her. The driver landed passengers. He told them to be in this place and nothing will happen to them. Chen took his phone and said with excitement that he needed to call his mother. The man ran to the car door. He told his passengers that they would live and the victims were not in vain. Chen shouted after the driver that everything would be fine. The main character told his mother on the phone that he was at the evacuation point. The woman told her son that his sister went to look for him. The protagonist was very surprised when he heard from his mother that his sister had gone in the search. At this time, someone threw a backpack into the main character on the side. He turned around in surprise, then went to her brother and said in displeasure that he did not even have time to collect his things. My sister told her brother that there was a savings bank in the bag and some products. This will come in handy for him during the evacuation. The sister hugged his brother and told him that there were animals around. There will be no second wave of evacuation. Wen smiled at the main character and said that it was time for her to leave. Her mother was waiting for her. The main character looked after the runaway sister. He thought that he could not leave his family and wait for death alone. The protagonist remembered his sister and mother, and realized that for him, there was no sense in living without relatives. Chen very quickly ran aside. He thought on the go that it was impossible to destroy the city. Near the eastern city gates were soldiers. All warriors above the first rank should have registered. The guy stood near the crowd of people. He told them that they were not ready to die either. The main character saw the girl. The soldiers led her. Chen told his colleague a displeased voice that the fear of death and selfishness are the most vivid human features. The girlfriend looked angrily at the guy and shouted that the soldiers would die, so far they will fight with the beasts. The girl screamed very viciously and loudly. She threw away the soldiers. The boss swung, and with all her might hit the protagonist with her foot. She threatened him angrily that she would beat him. The system told the owner that he had increased indicators. After a blow, Chechen told the boss that he liked such combat girls. The interlocutor was surprised to tell the guy that her poison could even destroy the beasts of the second rank. The main character hit the girl with all his might and shouted that she was very weak. Chen looked displeased at the lying boss and said that he only wanted to live. The interlocutor angrily answered the guy that humanity would die out if everyone would only think about themselves. At this time, the main character sharply stepped aside. He saw someone approaching the side. Chen stood with his blade against a huge crowd of predatory animals. He said that they all need a different result. A fighter with a sword shouted to people that the city of Qing is their home. They must protect it with flesh and blood. The monsters were approaching people. The warrior shouted to people that they needed to fight for humanity and for the city of Qing. The man pointed to the sword to the side and shouted to the soldiers that they needed to go on the attack. The commander shouted to the soldiers that it was necessary to start confrontation. He handed his blade forward. Chen stood and looked in surprise in front of him. The system said that his spirit has decreased. The animals ran to people and warriors began to shoot away from monsters. The main character climbed the stairs. He shouted to the boss that he would find her. Suddenly, someone went behind the main character and put his hand on his shoulder. The one-eyed old man told the guy that very dangerous animals ahead. It would be better for him not to stay here. Chen looked with a smile at the old man and said that he was chatting a lot. The partner explained to the guy that if he was devoured, then other warriors would spend time to save him. This will be squandered. Chen angrily answered the old man that strange animals are squeezing. The guy ran up the stairs. The old man shouted after him not to fight alone. A bloody battle took place on the roof of the building. People fought off monsters. Chen turned around and saw around him bloodthirsty demonic predators. The main character swung his blade and began to get from monsters. Chen looked around and could not find the boss. He decided that she might not came to the walls. The main character held the sword in front of him. He felt a hidden attack against him. A girl of the second rank appeared above the guy. She hung on a large web. The protagonist heard Poucha angrily told him that he had killed a lot of her comrades. The predator grabbed the guy with her paws and shouted that she would tear him to pieces. The main character looked angrily at the demoness and said that he was stinking from her. The spider told the man that only he was stinking here. Chen pulled in all directions and tried to break out. The girl pulled the web to herself and said viciously to the man that the more he would fight the threads, the stronger they will drag on. The guy felt that he could not move. He shouted loudly that the spider is very strong. The demoness grabbed the guy with a web and shouted that he would die now. The system told the owner that he had increased health and energy. Suddenly, the warrior shot at the demoness on the side. She scattered into pieces. Chen thanked for the help. The spider lay on the ground. She told the person that the final victory would still be behind them. The main character heard someone shouted about the beast of the giant behind. He turned around. Chen looked aside in surprise and asked, "What the hell is this?" The main character saw a huge poisonous monster of the 5th rank in front of him. The commander swung a sword in front of him and shouted to the soldiers to open the fire. Warriors began to shoot from machine guns. Machine guns from the wall fiercely shot in the direction of the crowd of monsters. Automatic weapons bullets struck monsters. Bright explosions were heard around. The huge mutant was very wounded. After shelling in his stomach, there was a large hole. The wounds on the bodies of monsters began to heal. Some of the people shouted that mutants were healing. The soldier scaredly looked in front of him and shouted that it was all over. A huge mutant jumped to his feet. His body was completely healed and there was no wounds on him. The monster swung forward and attacked people with the help of green mucus. The main character ran aside. Someone shouted from the side so that everyone would run away and hide. Chen, along with the warrior, hid behind the box. The soldier scaredly told the guy that the leader of the monsters had already appeared here. Their fearless detachment came to an end. The main character held out his hand to the fighter and said that he had a bad foreboding. Chen ran aside. He reassured himself that his boss could not go to certain death. A group of soldiers stood surrounded and fought off a pack of monsters around. The girl swung her weapon and stuck the blade into the mutant leg with all her might. The girl swung her blade and threw a huge mutant over herself. The monsters began to fly in all directions after a strong explosion. The girl said in displeasure that a detachment of suicide bombers was surrounded. It is becoming more and more difficult to restrain monsters. The warrior stood and looked in fright at a huge mutant next to her. The girl looked angrily at the monster. She shouted that he had killed her husband and she was looking for him everywhere. As a result, the mutant himself showed up to her. The warrior laughed angrily and shouted that today she would take revenge. The girl slipped up sharply. She shouted to the monster that she would kill him. The main character from the roof looked down and shouted that he had found the boss. A demonic beast stood next to him. The old man from behind told the main character so that he would not go to certain death. The main character turned around and told the old man that he would not be easy to give up. The guy jumped down high. He shouted that he would not go back until he reaches the southern wall. At this time, the girl swung a blade to finish off the monster from a scale. The warrior hit the mutant with a blade in the head. She shouted that he would taste energy from her body. The girl in flight with all her might hit the monster with her foot on the head. The mutant screamed angrily. The warrior cunningly glanced at the monster and said that he was not invincible. After that, self-healing began in the body of the mutant. He looked viciously at the girl. The surprised warrior bounced aside and fell to the ground. The mutant spread his hand sharply and prepared to finish off the girl. The warrior in dismay asked for forgiveness from her deceased husband because she failed. At the last moment, the girl thought that she had come to terms and everything was fine. The warrior closed her eyes and prepared to die. She told the suite that she was going to him. The main character jumped on the side and protected the girl. He asked the boss, "Did she really give up?" The main character held the girl in her arms. A huge monster stood behind them. Chen thought displeasedly to himself that for him now, he could only go at risk. The main character carried a frightened girlfriend in his arms and ran at full speed. Suddenly, something flew in from the side, and a very bright explosion in the crowd of monsters rang out. The system told the main character that damage was received. He has increased indicators. Chen fell to his knees with the boss in his arms. The protagonist thought to himself that he needed to go away. The blow was not fatal, so he survived. The boss scaredly moved to the guy and said that she wanted to examine the wounds. Chen answered her displeased that he would undress when he was at home. There are many extra eyes around. The warrior looked at the protagonist with fright. She noticed that the guy jumped to his feet. Chen grabbed his weapon and began to shoot from him in all directions. The protagonist held a weapon against monsters. He told the girl that they would use the beast as a barrier, so that the boss did not pass. The main character, together with his boss, fired around against the mutants. Chen and the girl ran aside. He shouted to her that they needed to advance to the city wall. The warrior unexpectedly scaredly stopped. She noticed something in front of her. The girl was surprised to notice that the monster attacked her with the help of green mucus. The protagonist flew up with the girl. Green mucus hit the mutants and they began to decompose. The demonic monster continued to erupt the green liquid. The girl in the arms of the guy shouted that he was the most terrible person. Chen carried her through the air. The boss looked at the guy's shoulder and noticed that he was smoking clothes because of green saliva. The system told the owner that he had increased indicators after damage from an unknown liquid. At this time, some mutant extended his tongue on the side and grabbed the girl by the leg. The monster with his tongue held his victim by the leg and with all his might hit the girl on the ground. The girl after the blow was very wounded. She had a blood of a company. The monster continued to attack the girl with the help of green poisonous mucus. The warrior looked in front of her, scared. Green liquid flew on it. The main character jumped out to protect the boss with his body. The acid hit him from behind on his back. The main character felt a very severe back pain. He barely restrained himself so as not to scream. The warrior scaredly asked the guy, "Why did he do this?" The main character stood in front of the girl. He felt severe pain and tried not to scream. The boss grabbed the guy's face with his hand and asked how she could repay him now. The guy smiled at the girl and said that she could take him to the entertainment complex. The system told the owner that he has activated temporary improvements. Suddenly, the body of the protagonist caught fire. All clothes on it were immediately destroyed. Chen looked at the girl and said that he could not be killed with an ordinary poison, and he could already come to life. The monsters spoke angrily among themselves. They prepared to rush at people. The main character was left alone with the girl. There were dangerous mutants around them. The monsters from all sides surrounded people and prepared to attack them. At this time, a bright fire pillar rose from the ground to the sky. Demonic animals scaredly bounced back. The main character stood exhausted and with burning eyes. At the back of him were puffs of smoke. A monster ran up from the side and prepared to grab a man with his paw. Chen sharply swung and hit the mutant with all his strength. The monster fell aside and the protagonist began to fall to the ground. Chen said in a weak voice that the condition during the breakthrough was very deteriorating. The body's capabilities go beyond the available. The boss appeared on time. She grabbed the protagonist in her arms. The girl held the guy in her arms. She promised him that she would save him at the cost of life. The soldiers continued to shoot from various weapons at the monsters to stop them. The fighter ran up and informed the commander in fright that the mortality rate among warriors reaches 90%. The commander looked menacingly aside and said that he would fight to the end. The monsters fled to people. The commander held the soldier for his clothes and asked angrily, did he really doubt him? The subordinate scaredly answered the commander that this is impossible. The mutants turned around and ran to the side. The commander asked his subordinate with interest, why did the animals change the direction? The commander joyfully looked aside and shouted that the city of Qing was saved. A man appeared on the side and showed his hand to the side. He said someone intervened. The commander viciously asked the man, did he really wanted the other end? The girl came up and informed the captain that they did everything and it happened. The man looked at the running mutants and answered the subordinate that everything that happened would be on him. The guy swung menacingly and with his hand and shouted that death was going forward. The main character the next day woke up in the building of the hospital in the ward. Chen lay on the couch and looked around in surprise. He realized that he was not dead. The nurses approached the guy and prepared to feed him and give medicine. Chen scaredly thought to himself that he was alive if he needed to take medicine. The main character sharply ran to the side of the ward. He shouted to the nurse that he would not take the medicine. Suddenly the guy stopped. He noticed how his boss was lying on the couch. The boss lay unconscious. Next to her stood a nurse and a doctor. The doctor asked if there are a patient's family around. The girl was very exhausted by energy. Therefore, she was in a coma. Chen shouted from the side that he was a member of the patient's family. The main character scaredly demanded from the doctor to help the girl. The doctor calmly replied that the cost of the operation will be 400,000. The doctor explained to the chief hero that to save the patient, it would be necessary to introduce the energy of other warriors within 10 hours. Donors also risk very much. The main character in a confident voice told the man that they could start. The doctor told the guy that you need to pay money first, and then they will contact the government. Chen went to the patient's bed and said that she had to be written out. The doctor dismissed the guy. What did he say? The main character was digging in the girl's things. He thought that due to the curse his energy was not exhausted. Therefore, he is the best person to save the boss. Chen said with the excitement that the damned energy was over. The system began to show the owner information about energy consumption. The main character was sitting near the bed of an unconscious patient. He closed his eyes and prayed that the Buddha helped to save the girl. The girl was lying on the couch. She came to her senses and put her hand on her face. The patient rose on the bed and rubbed her face with her hand. She said she was very warm. The girl reached out on the bed in the rays of the sun. She said she was good. The patient looked down and began to look at her body with surprise. The girl was very surprised. She did not understand who could take her clothes. The patient looked aside and saw a sad protagonist. She was surprised to ask the guy what happened to his face. The guy with tears in his eyes asked the patient, could she really forget everything? He reminded her that last night the girl drove him into a corner. Chen held out his hand to the girl and said that she would forget everything. He did not want the patient to be responsible. The girl thought very deeply. She recalled what happened yesterday. The boss recalled as if she was sitting near the guy. Chen lay on the bed. The girl thought deeply and did not understand whether she did it. The boss looked slyly at the protagonist and said that she was just dreaming of trying him. The main character pointed a finger at the girl and laughed. He reminded her that he had previously shared his energy with her. The boss angrily looked at the guy and asked, was it really funny? The boss swung against the protagonist with a pillow. Chen scared to the exit and shouted to the girl that he would no longer mock. The girl with a kick threw the main character out the door and said that he would not come in. Sad Chen sat on the floor in the corridor. He told himself that he was hard with the girls. The main character took the phone and remembered that he did not contact his family members. He did not know what was happening in the city of Qing. In the city near the entrance to the shelter, many people crowded. Doctors ran everywhere. The woman ran to the frightened wounded guy and asked if he saw the main character. The daughter went to her mother and tried to calm her down. At this time, the main character called the mother and sister on the side. The woman and her daughter were very happy when they saw the main character nearby. Mother, along with her daughter with tears in her eyes, called a guy by name. Sister hugged the guy. She joyfully told him that they thought as if he had been transferred to the city of He. The main character asked the girl, "What's wrong with the city?" Wen told his brother that the animals headed for the city of He and wiped him out of the face of the earth. The main character was very scared and surprised when he heard such news from the girl. A lot of people gathered in the square near the large building. There was a performance on the big screen. The man from the screen told citizens that they need to remember everyone who sacrificed himself. The host on the screen raised his hands up and shouted that all this for the sake of humanity. People in the crowd joyfully raised their hands up and shouted that everything for humanity. 5 days later, the main character was in a combat suit in the system of space and time. The main character carefully read the system message. His level returned the previous meaning. The guy was supposed to begin the test, and he needed to get up. Chen held a gun in his hands. He said that it would be nice to get a weapon worth 200,000 yen. The main character imagined as if he had put a pistol with a poster with the image of a guy. He shouted to the opponent that his time had come. Chen carefully looked at the metal ball. He decided that he had something inside. The main character swung his blade and cut a metal ball in half. Chen looked with interest inside the metal ball and noticed a lot of electric filling there. The guy looked with interest inside the ball at the electronic circuits. He told himself that this is the technology of the future. The main character was unexpectedly delighted. He hit his hands and shouted that he would get rich. The guy began to jump in all directions and wave a blade. He settled the metal balls. Chen cut a metal ball with a blade. Black liquid sprayed on it. The protagonist looked at the black liquid in surprise, which sprayed at him. Chen looked in surprise at the spots of black oil on his hand. The main character looked at his hand and said that the oil increases the volume of force. The system told the owner that his attribute increased. Chen sat at the table near the computer and studied the radio board. Chen looked with interest at the electronic components and said that there was something inside them. The main character looked with interest at the fee and noticed that there was a flash drive. Chen looked with interest at a small flash drive. He did not understand who he used it in this dimension. The main character sat near the computer and inserted a flash drive into it. He told himself that he could find out some secrets. The main character carefully looked at the monitor and read the information. He was very surprised. Suddenly the door opened and a girl entered the room. The main character was very scared. Chen, in dismay, pulled out a USB flash drive from the computer so that the boss would not see anything. The girl cunningly told the main character that he already needed to do business. There are 4 days left before the entrance exams. The boss went to the computer and carefully looked at the monitor. The main character was near her chest. The girl pointed a finger at the monitor and said that the guy put on the screensaver of her photo in a swimsuit. The main character began to push the girl away from himself. He recalled that it was her computer. The main character continued to fight off the girl in her apartment. He shouted so that she would not fit. The main character sat in his apartment in the room in front of the computer. Chen carefully studied information on the internet. He looked at ticket prices. The main character was unhappy. He said that if he buys places in the second row, he would spend 70,000. The main character raised his clothes and told himself that he could use his body. Chen came to the boss and asked her for money. He promised the girl that he would give himself in return. The boss laid her hand on the guy's head. She told him displeased that he would not approach her. The main character fell into the floor with displeasure. At this time, a man came up behind. The man brought a fee in his hands. He informed the guy with the girl that after careful checks, they found that the goods had not yet appeared on the market. The man handed the fee to the main character. He told the guy that the results of the analysis corresponds to his words. The price will depend on how the dialogue goes. Chen slyly looked at his partner and laughed cheerfully to himself. The main character held a radio payment in his hands. He told the man that the first thing from the secret kingdom in the market would be in demand. He promised a discount and demanded 1 million. The boss looked at the guy and offered him 20,000. Chen answered her, displeased that all this did not suit him. Chen held a radio payment in his hands. He told the girl that this product would raise her reputation. The main character held out his hand to the boss and said that he agreed to 50,000. The girl answered the guy that she agreed only 10,000. The main character turned around and went to the exit. He told the girl that he would go to the black market. The boss told the guy that she agreed to 30,000. The main character shook the girl's hand. He assured her that he would not deceive a large company. The interlocutor told the guy that they should make sure that no one had sold this product yet. The main character closed his eyes and reminded the boss that the motherboard costs only 30,000. Chen held out his hand back and was already preparing to get something else out of his clothes. The main character handed the boss several motherboards. She was very surprised. The girl answered the main character in displeasure that she would pay 30,000 only for the first fee. For the rest, she will pay 25,000. The main character grabbed the boss's hand and shouted to her that she had received 3 unique motherboard. Chen handed the girl 2 more boards and said joyfully that he could sell them. The boss got angry. She grabbed the protagonist by the hand and asked how he dares to behave like that. The girl put her leg in the shoes on the head of the protagonist. Chen, in a frightened voice, invited her to make friends. The guards threw the protagonist from the office. He joyfully shouted to the girl in flight that she could contact him again. The guy sat and counted the money. He did not have time to sell all the boards, and he was only enough for a ticket in the second row. Chen sat on the ground in the city. He reminded himself that he needed to visit a new educational institution. The main character approached the large school building and climbed into his class. In the classroom, the students sat and joyfully discussed that they were transferred to the newcomer, who was excluded from the second core. The protagonist opened the door with his foot to enter the classroom. Chen went into the room and asked the students, "Are they really talking about him?" The students looked at the protagonist with surprise. They carefully studied him with a look. The teacher looked strictly at the guy and shouted to go to class. Chen very quickly went to the classroom to his desk. He saw how the mouse's body lay next to the knife. The main character looked at the desk with the body of the rodent. He thought it was a terrible technique. The guy looked at the teacher and felt an evil aura from her. He realized that he was not happy in this place. The main character spread his hands to the side and shouted cheerfully that he had received universal approval. The students turned around and looked in surprise at the guy. They decided that something was wrong with him. The girl raised her hand and said that she wants to sit next to the main character. Chen imagined as if he had hugged the girl and told her that they would not fit in the same chair. The girl imagined as if she was sitting on the same chair next to the new one. The teacher coughed loudly. She wanted to attract the attention of school children. The woman viciously told the students that she wants to inform them of the precautions before the entrance test. The teacher told school children details about the exam. It will take place the day after tomorrow and will last 2 days. The woman looked angrily at the protagonist and said that he could not hold out on the first day. School children looked at the beginner with surprise. One of them said that the main character would definitely not last. Chen very viciously looked at the students. Lightning appeared in his eyes. The protagonist moved very sharply and was behind 2 school children. Chen grabbed 2 students with his own hands and hit them on the ground with all his might. The main character held school children by the hair and viciously asked why they were silent. The teacher came up from the side. She told the main character to stop behaving like that. Chen released 2 school children out of his hands. He told the teacher that tomorrow they would see on the training ground. The next day, a lot of people gathered on the training site. Chen looked joyfully in front of him. He said cheerfully that he could wait for this day. At this time, the main character rang the phone. He held out his hand and turned on the connection. My sister scaredly and loudly asked his brother, "Where did he get the money for tickets?" Chen on the phone told her sister to better take something to eat. She could not worry about the rest. A lot of people sat inside the building in the arena. All places were occupied. Wen turned and told her mother that their son had a girlfriend. The boss heard the girl's word. She thought to herself that she was just in good relations with the main character. People gathered near the large monitors. There began the competition of beginners. The host shouted to the participants that the first round would begin soon. Ma Shuai and the protagonist from the 7th Corps were invited. Chen climbed up the stairs. He was preparing for competitions in the arena. A huge fighter Ma came out. The main character said that he will be the last to stand in this arena. The main character kneaded his hands and stood in the arena. He said that today there will be a turning point in his life. Chen turned to the side and looked at the opponent. He immediately recognized him. Ma viciously glanced at the protagonist and said in displeasure that he did not think that they would meet so quickly. Chen waved his hand to his opponent and asked Fun that his help was useful. The fighter was very angry. He looked at his opponent with hatred. 10 minutes before the start of the competition, the main character was inside the male toilet. Chen stood focused with his eyes closed. He told himself that he should show his strength. Suddenly, the guy heard some noise on the side. More people entered the toilet booth. The athletes stood around the protagonist and looked at him with great interest. Chen dressed. He told himself displeased that he began to demonstrate his abilities already in the toilet. The athlete went to the main character from the side and joyfully asked him to teach him. The main character climbed into his pocket. He told interested guys around him that there is something that can be done longer. One of the athletes saw that the ruler was incorrect. He shouted that it was self-deception. Chen ran to the exit. He shouted to the guys that they could still test themselves. The athlete angrily told friends that any of them would kill the protagonist in battle. A red-haired girl in a mask looked out from the side. She told herself to herself that because of the protagonist, she became more frequent in her heartbeat. The stranger told herself to herself that she wanted to see the abilities of the protagonist before the game. But she stumbled upon something more expected. The main character stood in the arena opposite his opponent. Spectators from the hall shouted that the time had come to revenge. Ma grabbed his opponent by the shoulders and invited him to forget about all the conflicts. Chen calmly answered the partner that if he was small, then this is not a sentence. The fighter viciously rushed and with all his might hit the protagonist with his hands. The main character, after a strong blow, flew back. On the side, everyone began to scream about strong humiliation. Ma swung his fist to once again hit his opponent with all his strength. The audience was very delighted. They shouted that the athlete act more boldly. The main character missed another very strong blow with a fist. The system told the owner that he had increased fertility. Ma grabbed the opponent with his hand by his head and viciously told him that they would now see who would laugh. Chen looked up in front of him. He told the opponent that there was nothing surprising in his strength. Ma looked at his opponent with surprise. The audience in the hall was amazed. The main character swung sharply and raised his leg upward against the opponent. Chena looked angrily at the fighter. Ma was very scared from his gaze. The fighter scaredly fell into the arena. Chen asked his opponent, "Did he show his abilities enough?" Ma said in displeasure that his energy was exhausted. He asked the guy, "Why is that so uncontrollable?" The main character answered thoughtfully to the partner that there is no need to be controlled. Ma advised the guy to show less energy during the competition. The protagonist glanced angrily at the opponent and said that he blamed himself and not him. Chen held out his hand to his opponent and told him in an evil voice that he was offering a truce. Ma was very angry. He squeezed his hand into a fist and called the protagonist an idiot. The judge raised the guy's hand up and said that the main character became the winner. In the second round, the girl Inli from the second building came out against the protagonist. The main character stood in a combat pose. Around him was a stream of blue energy. Inli in fright asked the guy to remove the flow of energy from her. Chen shouted to the girl that he would use even more energy against her. The main character increased the flow of energy against the girl. She grabbed her hands on her clothes and screamed loudly what was going on. In the third round against the protagonist, the formidable fighter Sun Gun came out. The fighter jumped up high. There was bright energy around him. One of the spectators shouted that we should already recognize the defeat. Sun approached the main character and said that he would like to look at least one eye after the test. Chen put his hand on the opponent's head. He prepared to hit him. The protagonist swung and with all his might hit Sunya's head against the arena. A beaten fighter scaredly told the main character that he was very courageous. Girls in a pause between battles jumped into the arena. In the fourth round against the protagonist, Liu Qing protruded from the first core. A girl with red hair jumped into the arena. She began to warm up before the battle. The main character looked at the rival and asked if she really imagined the star. Lin joyfully looked at the opponent and said that he was a very nice guy. The main character looked at the girl in dismay and said that he did not want to fight such a beauty. Chen held out his hand to his rival and asked if they saw each other somewhere earlier. Lin answered the guy with a smile that after the competition they could even go on a date. A displeased judge came up from the side. He told the guy and the girl to stop. Participants in the fight turned to the man and said that they agree. Lin glanced angrily at the protagonist and prepared to attack him. The girl in a combat flight flew to the guy and kept her foot in front of her. Chen stood and watched with great surprise how the rival flew up to him. Chen held out his hand forward and grabbed the girl in the knee in flight. The main character shouted in a surprised voice that the girl had a silk underwear. The audience was very happy and surprised. They demanded details from the guy. Satisfied viewers asked the protagonist to say color. The protagonist shoved the girl's leg away from him to the side. The rival was very surprised. She flew back and did not have time to defend herself. Chen spread his arms to the sides and told the girl that she could attack him. The protagonist clutched the girl with his hands from behind. She could not free herself. Chen felt a very strong smell from the side. He raised his head up. The main character stood with his rival in the center of the arena. Chen held his hands a surprised girl and continued to repeat about the smell. 5 minutes before the exam, the protagonist was near the toilet cabin. Chen headed for the exit. He shouted to the angry rivals that envy is very bad. The girl looked inside the room. She wanted to test the abilities of the protagonist. Suddenly, the stranger sneezed loudly. The guy stood surprised opposite her. The stranger apologized to the guy and said that she apologizes. The girl held out her hand with a handkerchief to the clothes of the protagonist to wipe it. She saw that he had strong thoracic muscles. The stranger wiped the guy's clothes with a handkerchief and carefully looked at him. The stranger looked at the guy with excitement and said that he should be better without clothes. Chen grabbed the girl's hand and said that she would not wipe him further. Chen grabbed the stranger by the hand. He told her that she was standing very close to him in a public place. The stranger looked at the guy and said that she would not resist. Chen answered her displeased that he had no plans for her. The guy told the interlocutor that there was a pungent smell from her body. He sneezed loudly. The girl looked at the guy with surprise. She had traces of saliva on her face. The stranger screamed loudly that she would die now because of the saliva. The guy calmly answered her that he had warned her. The girl was very angry. She pressed her hand to her face. The stranger screamed loudly and ran to the exit. She called the protagonist a pervert. Police appeared from the side. They shouted that they would arrest the guy now. The main character ran away from the police and shouted loudly that he did nothing. Chen shouted angry with a runaway girl that he remembered her. The main character held a girl in the ring with his hands. Lin admired the opponent that he was very strong. The main character sharply turned the girl, and with all his might hit her head on the arena. The judge raised his hand up. He shouted that the protagonist won from the 7th Corps. Chen looked at the lying rival. He told her that the competition was over. Lin displeasedly told the guy that she would not go on a date with him. The protagonist answered the girl that he would not go to meet with such an ugly. Lin was very unpleasantly amazed when she heard such words from the opponent. The girl repeated displeasedly to herself that the guy called her ugly. The rival viciously attacked the protagonist in the ring and strictly asked how he dared to call her so. The main character left the arena. A rival remained behind him. The judge shouted that the next group came out. A guy with a backpack ran up from the side. He suggested that the main character go to them at a technological university. It was a paradise for real men. The main character imagined as if a bunch of girls would be at the university around him. He said in a dreamy voice that it was tempting. The student waved his hands in all directions. He told the main character that their school is full of teachers with experience and no girl is not available. The main character looked angrily at the student and shouted to get away. The student looked after the departing main character. He realized that Chen Yu did not like his performance. The main character heard someone from the side of good luck in a fight for Cherry Kaiji. The protagonist looked with surprise at the student in the arena. The student fought against his opponent. The audience in the hall shouted the words of support for Chan. The judge raised the athlete's hand and said that Chen won from the 7th Corps. A teacher with a notebook came up on the side. She asked if there was no one else from their corps except Chen Kaiji. The main character approached the woman behind the woman and said that he was also involved. The woman turned and viciously shouted to the guy to fail as soon as possible. Chen looked at the teacher and said that she had very vicious facial features. The woman viciously shouted after the guy that she was not surprised that he was expelled from the 2nd building. On the side, a man with a woman approached the main character. They asked him about his name. The woman told the guy that his results were a mark of 035. She offered the guy cooperation. The man turned around and asked the woman who she was. The teacher said that the main character was cheating and it was necessary to annul his results. The man asked the interlocutor to evidence of the crook. The teacher fell silent sharply. She did not know what to answer the stranger. The woman with excitement told the main character that they want to test him on the level of power. The main character raised his clothes and told the examiners that they could touch him. Chen angrily looked at the woman and asked her to hurry. The examiner approached the guy with the device. The man stood on the side and with admiration looked at the body of the protagonist. The teacher was very amazed when she saw the testimony of the device. The woman looked in surprise at the device and saw there that the guy's strength was 075. The teacher was surprised. She did not understand how this could be possible. The examiner said that according to data from the 7th Corps, the strength of the protagonist is 035. She did not understand why now the power was 075. The teacher said in a scared interlocutor that the guy did not go to school, and therefore she did not really fill his profile. The examiner strictly told the woman that they would report this to the relevant authorities and punish her. The teacher scaredly fell to her knees. She shouted that her position and a prize had disappeared. The examiner told the guy that his indicator is 075. There will be no problems with the exam. The man hugged the protagonist and promised that he would continue to root for him. The teacher was unhappy due to the fact that they were now sick for the protagonist. The athlete viciously said that he did everything he could in order to be in the first place. The student at the back ran to the main character and shouted that he had been cheating. The student swung and pushed his fist to the face of the protagonist. He shouted to taste him. A man came up from the side and hit with all his might a hand over the attacker's face. The man viciously told the student that he would not doubt their professional skills. The athlete angrily looked after the main character and thought that he would remember everything. Near large doors there was a group of people. They all were waiting for the examiner. A man appeared in front of the participants. He was the chief examiner. He invited everyone to get acquainted with the rules. The man told the participants that each of them would be disqualified. After the defeat, they all should be ready to kill each other. The examiner told the participants that it was time for them to write a will. The man looked strictly at the students and greeted them viciously. The examiner stood near large doors. There was a crowd of students around him. The man spread his hands to the side and greeted everyone in the entrance exam. The doors to the next large hall opened widely. From there, a bright light appeared. Students began to go into the room. The examiner shouted to them that a real test begins only now. There were large tables inside the arena. There were many spectators in the stands. The presenter said that the second part of the exam should begin. Spectators were sitting in the stands and excitedly supported their participants. People sat in the hall and clapped loudly. They wished the participants good luck and success. The girl in the hall joyfully shouted to her mother that the level of the protagonist was raised. In the VIP zone sat men. The members of the admission commission argued among themselves and demanded that they do not intercept students from each other. The host shouted to the microphone that all candidates were invited to the arena. Students sat in the hall on large chairs and rested. There was silence around. Participants in green tracksuits lay in their chairs and rested. The main character lay in his place and calmly sang a melody to himself. Suddenly, the main character heard some evil laughter next to him. He opened his eyes. The man came up from the side and viciously asked, "Is this the famous Chen Yu?" The director shouted to his subordinates to grab the guy. The main character asked strangers displeasedly, "What are they doing?" One of the students grabbed the protagonist behind the protagonist. Chen, in a displeased voice, said that even the director could not hench. The main character threatened the man that he would bring to him. The director viciously told the guy that no one would care about him. Chen shouted in a very dissatisfied voice that he could not stay here. The students grabbed the hands of the protagonist and began to knead him from all sides. The director calmly told the guy that students will massage him earlier now. The girls did it, but they brought them. Chen introduced himself surrounded by girls. He said with admiration that all this is humanly. The director shook his hand in a surprised student and asked if he understood him. The man said with admiration for the protagonist that he trained for the sake of magnificent forms and wants to release all power. The director looked at the teacher and said in a dissatisfied voice that it would be necessary to change old teachers. The man stood near the students in chairs. He told them that over many years he had seen a lot on the test. The director told the participants that priority is given to the core, which scored the best indicator at the first stage. The man said to the students with a smile that it would be not so difficult to start. At this time, the athlete's body flew at him from behind. Students in chairs were very surprised when they noticed that an athlete flew into the room through a broken wall. Doctors with a stretcher ran into the room to pick up an athlete. Students scaredly jumped up from their seats. The main character asked a man, "Is it too cruel?" The director turned and told the guy that the scars were decorating a man. Doctors tried to spend the athlete on the gurney. The orderly said that he would give the patient anesthetic. "You need to carry out the operation." The student got up from his seat and said something incoherent. The doctor asked the guy, "Where did he get hurt?" Doctors were very surprised when they heard such words from the patient. They looked at him silently. The presenter in the microphone screamed that it was time to invite participants in the second stage. The man listed for the audience the names of all participants from the table. The host very viciously and loudly shouted that the competition was beginning. A couple fought in the ring. The girl wrapped her arms around her opponent with her hands. In another place, the famous school naps fought among themselves. They could not share the girl among themselves. Two rivals fought among themselves in the ring. They fiercely beat each other. The host was surprised to look aside at the participants from the 7th Corps. The man looked at the protagonist and other athlete. He did not understand why the participants did not move. In the center of the Great Hall, the competition participants gathered. There were several small arenas. The host raised his hand up and told the audience that he would act as a commentator. Guests got the opportunity to watch the first players. Beloved fought among themselves. In the room, the number one girl clutched her hands behind the guy's head. The opponent let go of the guy and shouted that she could not do this for the sake of victory. The fighter displeasedly told the girl that he would lose. The rival replied that she was surrendering. The guy with all his might hit his stomach with his hand. The girl looked at him in dismay. The girl scaredly picked up her lover Lee. The guy joyfully answered the girlfriend that today he would part with her forever. The participant in dismay called the doctor. At this time, 2 medications stood on the side. The participant jumped out of the ring and very quickly ran to the doctor's. The girl scaredly grabbed the doctor by the hand and asked him to help her boyfriend. The medic answered the interlocutor in displeasure that the competition was not over yet. The presenter said that the girl Van left the arena, and therefore she is considered a retired. The judge raised the guy's hand and shouted that the winner, Li Qing. The girl got angry due to the fact that her friend pretended. Li viciously looked at the girl and said that otherwise she would have defeated him. The commentator explained to the audience that some participants are going to different actions. They even convey their lovers. In room number 2, prepared to fight 2 bulkers. They joyfully looked at the girl near the ring. The fighter held out his hand to his opponent and shouted that he could not lose. The athlete sharply attacked his opponent with a stream of fire. The student fell dead to the arena. The athlete shouted to the girl to look at him. In room number 3, the guy held out his hand to the lying girl and said that she had lost. She can no longer bring happiness. The commentator said that a person who will win the test will be the first to get the opportunity to enter. The commentator said in surprise that the protagonist did not move a step against his opponent. The director used to tell students to use special tactics and do everything exactly as he would tell them. The man hugged the guys and explained that they should wait until the rest of the participants lose. In the beginning, people will not pay attention to them. The athlete asked the director if it would be possible to advance later. The director hit the guy with his hand and said that it was too early to talk about it. The man told the guy not to dream. He viciously added that no student for many years so quickly reached an increase. The main character held out his hand to the opponent and demanded that he recognize the defeat. The opponent demanded that Chen recognize his defeat. Students stood and continued to swear in the ring. Someone shouted from the side that the defeat should recognize the one who has the level lower. The director thought displeasedly to himself that very soon the 7th Corps could lose all respect. The man viciously shouted to the participants that they should fight if they did not want to do otherwise. The athlete looked angrily at the protagonist and said that he would still regret his decision. It was time for him to give the debt. Chen displeasedly answered the opponent that he loves to rush with all sorts of phrases. The athlete activated chi energy in his body. A red glow appeared around him. The host shouted with admiration that he sees martial arts in front of him, but they were taught only at universities. Students sharply jumped and tried to impress the protagonist with a blow of the leg from above. Chen put up a block over his head. The student angrily thought that he himself was a descendant of a great family, and his opponent is an insignificance. The athlete flew up to the main character and attacked him on the left. Chen dodged in time. There was a strong explosion in the center of the arena. Someone shouted so that people lean. The audience was very scared. Mother scaredly thought that her son had come to an end. The battle continued in the center of the arena. The commentator shouted that Chen had blocked the blow. Chen held his opponent's leg with his hand. The commentator shouted with admiration that the guy did not use his energy when blocking. The judges were sitting behind the stands. One of them said that students of the 7th Corps are not so bad. The girl was sitting on the rostrum and could not believe that she was observed by her brother. The main character held the opponent's leg in his hands. He viciously told him that he is not the only one who owns martial arts. The athlete looked angrily and with hatred at his opponent. The main character threw the opponent back and began to twist with his hands. He shouted that he was giving the answer. The protagonist swung and hit his surprised opponent with 2 legs. The battle continued in the center of the ring. Chen finished his opponent. The audience silently sat in the stands and watched the fight with great attention. The fans were delighted. They shouted loudly that everything was very fine. My daughter told the delighted mother that Chen had won. The woman was glad that her son is fine. One of the guests got up and said with interest that he had not met such an interesting candidate for a long time. The athlete glanced angrily at the protagonist and thought that an outcast could not have such a force. The student, in a dissatisfied voice, accused the opponent of taking doping. Chen answered the opponent with displeasure that he was right, but he did not want to explain himself. The main character raised both hands up and walked near the arena. The audience supported him. The sister, along with the mother, joyfully grabbed each other's hands. The boss told herself that she would call the guy a real wolf cub. The teacher came up from the side. She grabbed the protagonist by the hand and shouted that she had heard everything. The woman held the guy's hand. She shouted that he had taken doping and his exams should be cancelled. The main character followed the woman and said that she did not understand jokes. The teacher demanded that the guy close his mouth. The teacher complained to the director that the main character took doping. As a result, the reputation of their corps was ruined. The man asked the woman, "Is it really true?" He explained that everyone else has the opinion that the main character simply has great potential. The director grabbed the guy with his hand and promised that he would be his side. The director, along with the student, moved aside. The teacher saw someone in behind. The mayor told his subordinate in a thoughtful voice that the guy fought well. The man in glasses stood and looked after the departing main character for a long time. The teacher strictly asked the director, why did he cover the protagonist? Chen himself admitted to the use of doping. The man answered the interlocutor that the guy was just joking. The mayor asked the subordinate, "Is it true?" The subordinate replied that he doubts that this would be enough for such blows. Chen asked the stranger what he doubts. The stranger answered the guy that he had not yet come his exam. The main character confidently shouted to his partner that he could fight him at any moment with the help of energy. The guy jumped up. He shouted that he was using the technique of Northeast. The system told the owner that he had increased indicators. The man calmly stood opposite the protagonist and waved his hand. The fighter cunningly closed his eyes and did not pay any attention to the guy. Chen was unhappy. The teacher pointed to the guy with his hand and told the director that the student accurately took doping. The mayor came up behind. He said that even warriors of the 3rd level could not survive, and the main character was able to. The fighter said that the strength of the protagonist is 1-4. Doping, which can be bought in the market, increases the level only to 1. The director joyfully shouted that the main character had won, and the champion was the 7th corps. The director threatened the teacher that he would write her a fine of half her salary. The woman was very scared. She scaredly shouted to the director so that he would not punish her. The main character maliciously told the present that the mayor himself confirmed his strength. Any other can be convinced of this. The guy scaredly noticed how some strangers jumped to him from all sides. The main character scaredly asked people around him, "Who are they?" Representatives of universities approached the main character and invited him to their place. Chen displeasedly told his partners that some of them leave their business cards. The main character told the representative that they first go to their superiors, and then to him. He wanted to learn only to those who will provide the best conditions for him. The guy sat joyfully in an armchair. He remembered that he wanted to study at Zinda, but he was wondering what he could still offer him. The presenter told the audience that the new round was beginning. Van from the 4th Corps was supposed to go against the protagonist. A Van guy appeared on the side. He threatened the main character that this competition would end very quickly for him. Chen thought to himself that the 4th Corps was considered one of the best in the city. The commentator warned that the competition would begin in 5 seconds. The athlete prepared to fight. Bright energy appeared around him. The judge shouted that the competition had begun. The fighter jumped up to attack the protagonist. Suddenly, Van fell to his knees and shouted that he was surrendering. He recalled that he had already said that everything would end very quickly. Chen was very surprised. The protagonist told the opponent displeased that he had not even tried it. Van asked the protagonist, did he really need to do this? Van viciously looked at the opponent and said that he would not prevent him from admitting defeat. The protagonist waved his hand to the opponent and prepared to leave. He said that they had nothing more to talk about. On the top floor were observers. Someone said that the guy is ruthless. A man with glasses said that the main character could take part in subsequent battles. The fighter reminded his colleagues that they were the best players. The girl in the chair said that official competitions are measured by the level of skills, not the amount of strength. The fighter in glasses said that the level of the protagonist is 07. Their weakest ally was at the highest unit level. Yao looked at the protagonist from above and said with the surprise that his back seemed so familiar. Pretty soon there was a break between the rounds, and all the guests were waiting for the third, since he could become the final in this tournament. All participants who competed among themselves have already appeared on the Board of Honor, and each of them now wanted to win in any way. Meanwhile, one of the participants received advice on Chen Yu, who had a wonderful physique, and now had to look for his weaknesses in order to harm it there. The participant was ordered that even when she would understand that he could not win, she did everything so as not to lose and not leave with shame. The girl's name was Van Yue. She was an assistant to the director of the second building and former classmate Chen Yu. At one time, he managed to be his headman. When a man released his student, he was sure that she could defeat a poor guy who was not lucky with an opponent. But Chen was ready for a brutal struggle, applying all his strength. So he was surprised when he saw a former old class in front of him. Van came closer to him and asked where the guy keeps the way, because she could not let him go right now without defeat. In addition, the girl already managed to hear that the opponent was excluded by the director himself, who led the competition process. But Chen did not want to continue the conversation, and said that he did not see the point of staying in this backward building. So he plans to change the situation. Then the classmate directly said that the parents of Chen was in vain on him. In her opinion, now the guy will have to work hard to repay the family at least some part for his training. However, the classmate did not behave on her words and behaved quite restrained. Then she could not take possession of her thirst for victory, and asked what Chen wanted. He replied that he absolutely did not need anything. It is rare that it is possible to meet with the former headman again, so I decided to boast of a large number of business cards from my native universities. Then he took out a lot of pieces of paper from his pocket with invitations, which other students could not dream of. Therefore, it was difficult for the girl to believe her eyes. The invitation was really not placed in his hands, and the guy noted that the admission commissions are so asking to get his attention, so he is already annoyed from their words. Then he began to sort out invitations, among which were from universities Jingche, Fudan, and even from Hangan. His behavior provoked Van to aggressive actions, and when the guy noticed that the conversation was turning to the negativity, he quickly began to apologize for his behavior and changed the topic to jokes. Therefore, in order not to continue the dialogue with Van, Chen drew attention to the director of the second building, with whom they had not seen for a long time, and decided to go to say hello to him. He ran to the man and, taking a pack of cigarettes, offered to smoke together while there was a short break. However, the director immediately refused, and therefore the student asked why he was so sad. They say not glad to see that the option in official competitions. Then the man replied that he excluded the student only for violation of school rules, so there is no need to keep offense against him. However, Chen did not plan to be offended by someone. He only decided to joke a little and offered the director a piece of his insole as a gift. When the man found out what exactly fell into his hands, he immediately threw a piece of shoes, which had a rather sharp and unpleasant smell. The director's behavior has changed a lot, and he directly asked the guy if he really does not understand that he was digging up the grave of such actions. However, the student's answer was unexpected, because the guy confirmed that he himself wishes his speedy death, so he was not afraid of anyone. Then the director screamed Van Yue that she was obliged to defeat the guy, and has no right not to justify his expectations and get a defeat. The girl was strongly configured and for the period of her preparation became confident in her own abilities, so she was not going to bring the director with shame. In a matter of seconds, the host was announced about the beginning of the next competition for the victory in this tournament. Van Yue was the first to go on the battlefield, and already expected her enemy to ruthlessly defeat him in front of all the spectators. Without waiting for the readiness of Chen Yu, she rushed at the guy as unexpectedly as possible so that he did not even have time to respond and run away. As soon as she approached the guy, she made her foot to get into the head of Chen and put him in the arena from one blow. But the guy managed to evade. Then Van realized that right now she would have to give all the way 100% for the sake of a grand victory. The director supported the student in her decisions. They say that she needs to fight. In addition, Van was his best student who had not only talent, but also perseverance. After the blow received, Chen received more plus 300 to his QE, and this was too little, as he expected more compensation. Van was also surprised at the behavior of a guy who was not angry at her, but as if longing for him to continue to beat, and he would substitute his cheeks. The director did not understand why this blow was not enough, since according to his testimony, Van Yu had a sufficient level of force, and now it turns out that they underestimated the enemy. These excitement and these level grew in the blood of the guy, so he looked old age and said that now it was her turn to get an answer. Suddenly, the student made his master's blow and hit Van from the floor, which was due to which he threw it to the other end of the arena. Then he rushed at the girl from above and was ready to finish her, calling himself a winner from the 7th Corps. The director of the second building simply watched the battle and as if he could not say words because he saw with his own eyes. Indeed, in his opinion, the worst student of Chen, for whom very little time passed, was able to build up his strength so much that he could not be recognized. Soon the guy got up and told everyone that he won, and the headman emphasized that he did not even have to disappear at work in order to feed his family. But now, before the eyes of many, The girl lost to that the very Burman, which was not respected in the second building. Now the so-called mistress of the elder lay in front of his feet, having no strength to rise or say words. The presenter voiced his surprise, because he had never seen before the person overcame the opponent with just one blow. So the student from the 7th Corps inspired horror. The man was even delighted that he himself had long completed his exams. Sister Chen Yu could not check that now it was about her brother, who was not like himself. Then no one expected such power from him. Meanwhile, Van Yue kept a grudge against the winner, since because of him her consciousness was now dimmed and difficult to gather her thoughts due to dizziness. Now she sincerely looked her opponent in the eye, and still could not believe that it was he who defeated her. Besides, so easily, the girl finally realized that mocking the guy was a bad idea, and he himself noted that now she will think better before throwing words into the wind and be so pompous. The presenter voiced that it was a wonderful duel, and now another dark personality appeared on the entrance exams, which I wanted to watch further. Men also discussed the guy among themselves and considered him a real genius who managed to circumvent the system so easily and become a real warrior. However, they soon began to worry that the daughter of one of them is also involved in this year's competitions, so she may have a chance to compete with Chen Yu. However, the girl herself chose the path of a warrior, so sooner or later she will die anyway, so there is nothing to worry about her. For his acquaintance, such words seemed strange, but he was right and there was no point in arguing for what would really happen. Meanwhile, Chen Yu himself could not move away from Van, who lost so easily to him, although she was so confident in her victory earlier. Now he reminded her that when he was excluded, the elder mocked him and was too arrogant, without a drop of pity. And now it was the turn of Channy to hope that next year the girl will leave the second building and do not study with the director of his lie. The man heard these words, but he could not publicly object to him. So he simply restrained his anger at the former student, who did not succumb to his system through his teeth. Before starting a conversation with a girl, Yue took her in his arms and wanted to take her away from the place where he grandiosely won her. However, he did not care about her for too long and unexpectedly threw it on the floor that the girl had closed his eyes again. The director ran to his student to help her get up, or at least check if she completely survived after the competition. Now he had to call for help, so that the doctors checked everything well with a girl who looked obviously not healthier than others. Then Chen said that it was not worth dividing the students and the weak, because the director should treat everyone the same and not to be allocated from the crowd. That would be the right decision. However, in response, he did not hear anything, and offered the man 2 choices, and the first to check Van Yu, who barely breathed. But the man did not agree so quickly to the first option, and asked what would happen when he chooses the second. As it turned out, the guy had long wanted to learn the technique of Kamahama, which not everyone could own, so he offered such a deal to the director. At that moment, the man thought again that the guy was looking for death for himself. But the young man confirmed these words, and said that the director would be attentive and help him with this problem. Suddenly the man began to be very angry and barely restrained himself. So as not to raise his hand to the student, Chen noticed this and directly asked about his desire. After that, the guy began to scream throughout the arena for help. They say the director really hit him and tries to hide it from the audience. Then the leader stood up and asked everyone to behave accordingly to the place where they are now, and not turn everything into a circus. The director no longer had the strength to pay attention to the strange behavior of the former student, so he decided to at least help Van Yu and carefully took her by the shoulder. After that, Chen Yu said goodbye to the director and advised him to raise the best generation in the next Koka, which would at least be stronger. The head of the second building understood that now they were trying to provoke him, and he could not deal with the student right now, so he was just silent in response. But the man was sure that he would find ex-Russia, thanks to which he would be able to deal with annoying Chen without staining his own hands. Suddenly, the director of the 7th Corps, who was the same where the so-called Yu bastard studied, approached the guy. The man began to strongly hug the student and thank him for the fact that thanks to his victory, he can get a lot of money, almost a whole fortune. Then the presenter announced that after such a wonderful duel between Chen Yu and Van Yue, you can finally take a look at what is happening on other sites. Meanwhile, Zhen became one of the winners, who studied in the 12th Corps and was able to win. Also, one of the best fighters was Mabugo, who studied in the blue building and owned the technique of 5-time lightning. Among the winners appeared the name of the student from the 4th Corps, namely Tsai Kun. He managed to finish his opponent with several movements. Now Chen Yu sat among the audience and realized that today's competition would solve a lot. But the director immediately objected to him and called him naive. According to him, on this day, there was only an interstaple competition. The winners go to the next tour and will be able to determine their indicators there. The guy did not expect to hear such information, and was even shocked when he heard real plans for students who posted all efforts in this game. But soon the presenter announced that the first stage was finally completed and had to talk about the following actions. However, for a start, he invited the jury, which was supposed to announce the results. The chief examiner of the current entrance exams was invited. The jury congratulated all the candidates and noted that when some students were not chosen, this does not mean that they won. After all, if they were able to defeat at least one participant, this is already incredible. Soon he called the student at the number 021, who was called Chen Yu, and he was from the first corps. Its highest result was 7 points, and the lowest 5. Therefore, having calculated his average result, it became clear that he did not allow the student to go further in the competition. The guy was very upset and barely restrained his tears, because he was still the first to be publicly declared the loser. The student really made his maximum efforts, so now he was in despair. When the director of the 7th Corps saw this behavior, he asked Chen Yu not to behave the same. Then they announced a player named Ma Bugo from the blue building. Having called his highest and lowest score, it became clear that he also could not go further. After what he heard, the guy also could not restrain himself, and tears went from his eyes. He was sure that this year the jury is terrible and underestimates the players. Then the players announced the number 020, 6, 38, and 01665, who also could not go further. In a matter of minutes, the turn reached the number of 2333, under which Chen Yu from the 7th Corps was. Among the spectators was his mother and sister, who was waiting for the guy so that he definitely won the competition. And as it turned out, the girls were waiting for nothing. After all, the average score of Chen Yu was 9 and 4, which so far became the highest among the previously named. At that moment, the guy began to jump with joy, and the director from his corps rushed to the floor and began to kiss his student's legs for his efforts. Then his sister rushed at her mother with a hug, and joyfully washedly washed that Xiao still passed on. All other spectators were also incredibly proud of a guy who was previously considered an ordinary, stupid boy who could not achieve anything. And Chen himself was clearly not rejoicing, because of such grandiose success, his indicators of strength, temperament, temporarily spirit, gradually began to fall. The director continued to praise the student, and he, in turn, begged everyone to stop, as the system continued to take his percentage of resources from him. The man was incredibly grateful to the student for how well he managed to overtake other students, and now his bets would play, and he would really get rich. The sister continued to support her brother, and screamed from the balcony with all her might, so that only her voice was heard among hundreds of guests. Then the guy saw his loved ones, and smiling joyfully, came a little closer and began to wave his hand. But when he carefully examined the balcony with the guests, his face changed at the moment, and he immediately began to expire later because of the fear of those present. Among the guests was the boss, whom he least wanted to see in his speech, but nothing had left. How to continue to smile. Although he mentally understood that at this moment happiness was finished for him and the bottom was already punched, the jury continued to declare numbers and said that now, after he remembered everyone, the competitions are officially considered complete. After that, the man went to Chen Yu, and stretching out the bracelet to him, that it would be a thing that would allow the guy to participate in official competitions. Its number was indicated on it. During official competitions, the participant will appear under the number that is indicated on the bracelet, so it cannot be lost. And now, until the end of the day, all participants had to stay in the arena and wait until they were given phones so that they could contact their guardians to get some food. Regarding bracelets, they will be used as a personality certificate, so it is worth storing them until the end of the competition. After the announcement of the main information, the jury asked all the participants if they have additional issues to him regarding the organization. Everyone was silent, but suddenly Chen Yu raised his hand, who said that he had a very important question that was not mentioned earlier. Then the man felt that incredible strong energy would radiate from the guy. So it is clear why he showed himself so well on the battlefield. And the student was most worried about the financial issue, and who can compensate for the cost of the trip for his family. As it turned out, the man thought out and paid for everything on his own. In the evening, Chen Yu and the director of the 7th Corps went for a walk together, and there was no end to their delight. However, the director's surprise seemed strange to the student. So he asked for what his behavior was due to if the school principals see this building annually. But as it turned out, not one of the students of the 7th Corps never reached official competitions. So the man was in such a status for the first time, Chen decided to call mom and sister to wait for them. Because the house that opened before his eyes was really pretty beautiful and luxurious. Now the guy felt that his life had changed for the better. Now he sincerely rejoiced that he had a curse, and the time came to rewrite the life of a loser. And while he enjoyed temporary housing, he heard a knock on the door. Although there was already night outside and rather late for the guests, the visit of the stranger was alerted by Chen Yu, and he was in full combat readiness. After a few seconds, he got out of bed and asked exactly who was knocking. After that, the door opened and a beautiful girl entered the door, with whom the guy was not familiar before. So I saw her for the first time. As it turned out, her name was Ma Li, from the MA family, who leads the financial business. The girl was 13 at number and asked Chanya to take care of her. At that moment, the guy's behavior changed, and it was difficult for him to master himself to such a beauty. So strange words began to sound from his mouth. But for her, this was not a problem, because Lady Ma came to just say hello and put Ira a fight, which she emphasized once again. However, Chen did not agree to such conditions and said that in no case would he take care of a girl who could become his competitor in the arena. At that moment, Ma got angry and already began to regret that she came to this from the room and showing mercy, the first to decide to meet, but Chen was only delighted that he could be left alone again and did not even remember the number that the girl called less than a minute ago. He quickly closed the door behind her and reached for him to go to his bed to continue to bask in such apartments. Suddenly, the young man remembered that the girl's number was quite large, and opening the door again added that he was still on status. But he did not have time to finish, since his sister, who was most worried and supported her brother Xiao, rushed into his arms. He led her into the apartment and began to show everything inside. He had 2 bedrooms, 2 guest rooms, and free food. The guy's family was infinitely happy for him. However, the sister had one question that still could not give her rest, even at a moment when it remains only to rejoice. The girl suspected that the guy found a lady, because his level of power grew up. In addition, now he is studying in the 7th building, and it is not known how. He managed to transfer. There were too many questions, and Xiao Yu did not want to answer them all, as he only finished with the competition, so the head was still going around from overwork. Therefore, while he proposed to go together and took his mother with him to prepare him the best and most satisfying dish for dinner, soon they reached the dining room, where there were already a lot of prepared dishes that were already covered on the table. It was possible to choose. The guy's mother was worried because an important competition awaited him in the future, which would be more difficult than all past. Therefore, in order for him to have the strength to win, he needs to eat healthy food as much as possible and rest well, so now he must begin this. Suddenly, near him, the number 13 appeared at the same table, the appearance of which Chen could not foresee and was very surprised at this meeting. The girl introduced herself to the guy's family and said that she was also participating in the competition this year, so the next day she would be in official events. It seemed strange to Chen that the Ma Li family did not cook for her. But as it turned out, the relatives did not come. But she does not know how to cook, so she has to somehow survive. But in order not to be tactless, she decided to offer something in exchange for periodically to eating dishes. As it turned out, it was about Ba Huangtiao, which seemed quite strange for Chen Yu. Chen did not understand what kind of information there will be, because the fact that the girl is from the Ba Huan family, it was clear. However, Ma Li possessed information that did not have confirmation, and few knew about it. As it turned out, the girl used to be her classmate and always behaved quite uninteresting. She studied well, but the relationship with her family did not work out, so none of the family members came. That is why she sat alone all the time, and moreover, and most importantly, the girl was still alone and never fell in love. Ma Li said all this with hints, so in the end she directly said that the guy has every chance to experience fate. However, Chen decided not to even listen to the end, and immediately categorically abandoned the proposal that they tried to impose on him. Mother Yu heard what was talking about and immediately noticed that this girl was so thin and it would be difficult for her to give birth. And the sister generally noted that Ba Huan looks like a child and not a couple at all. Soon the guy could not stand it and said that he did not come to the program for marriage, but in order to pass the exam. Soon everyone around them began to notice Ba Huan and pay attention to it. Someone shouted to the whole dining room that the girl was in the same room with them. Some mocked her. They say the food of ordinary mortals is not suitable for the heiress of the BA family, so it is strange that she eats along with everyone. Suddenly, gossip began to be heard that the father of the girl is the head of a company who would never find time for ordinary gatherings, so he did not come to the exam for his daughter. Chen Yu did not like this booth, which arranged number 13 due to the fact that Ba Huan generally remembered the existence of. The girl did not see anything terrible in this, but the guy could not calm down, and continued to say that Ma Li should be silent from the very beginning. Then his mother had already intervened and ordered that everyone present at the table ate quietly. Therefore, soon everyone began to meal and began to diverge, while all the students shared the conditional groups and began to be friends, or at least they were accompanied by their parents. Ba Huan sat alone in the dining room and everyone went around it. Meanwhile, Chen could not eat in any way, so he had to put the rest of the food with him so that there was something to eat in the middle of the night at home. Then he said that he would like to go to the training room. However, Ma noted that nothing good should be expected from repeated repetitions, and it is better to stay at home. But Chen was not going to listen to her advice, since the girl said this for her own benefit, so that she had fewer competitors who could really win her. And in the dining room, all the students and their families dispersed. Only Ba Huan remained, who continued to sit alone above the portion of food. Soon the dish cooled down, and tears began to fall into the plate, which, without stopping, poured from the eyes of a girl suffering from their loneliness. She did not just sit in the dining room, but continued to wait for her father would definitely come, and would not leave her alone before such an important exam. Suddenly, the girl heard someone's words regarding the fact that an important stage in life awaits her ahead, so do not be upset and cry. As it turned out, it was Chen, who handed the girl a box of food, which he specially took with the calculation to share with the poor thing. He suggested that Ba have dinner, because it would be funny if a daughter from a famous family lost due to an empty stomach on the eve of the exam. Then the girl turned to the guy and asked if she could ask him a question. However, Chen was surprised that she still has the strength to talk. He was ready to answer the question, but for a start, Ba should have been eaten, after which Chen would have listened to her. He sat down at the table to the girl and turned his back to her. Now the silhouette of the guy seemed very familiar to Huan. Then she took up the sticks and said that she started food, but in fact she fed herself with curiosity and questions regarding the guy. Ba quite quickly ate everything and thanked Chen Yu, but it was necessary to give the words to the poles of his mother, who was really a master in this matter. After that, the young man took out a pack of cigarettes and offered a girl, who immediately abandoned the offer, as students are forbidden to smoke, and Chen did not observe any restrictions and lit a cigarette. Then he turned to BA and recalled that she wanted to ask him a question. The girl said that strange people attacked her in Qing, but as a result, someone saved her. She still did not know who exactly it was, but she remembered only a voice and back, and Chen's back was very similar to the one she saw before losing consciousness. In addition, the timbre of the voice was also the same. However, the guy replied that at that time, he did research from the mysterious kingdom of the city of Qing. At that moment, Ba smiled and rejoiced, exhausted. She apologized for her fantasies and once again thanked for a delicious dinner. Then Chen was surprised that such an indifferent face of the heiress Ba Huan first showed emotions and smiled very nicely. But in order to get distracted, Yu asked the girl why she spent all night at the table, because she guessed that she was waiting for her father. Ba Huan smiled and said that this is not entirely true. In fact, all the time she just believed in him and hoped to see. There were tears in her eyes, but she tried to restrain them and said that Father Solo decided to cook only for her brother. Chen Yu had heard about him before. The guy's name is Ba Huani, and he is really the best student at the University of Jingche. According to Chen, all family members are the same. So he was sure that Ba also dreams of becoming the head of the security service and even proposed an action plan. However, the girl refused and said that perhaps in heart her father does not consider her worthy title of his daughter. Suddenly, the guy remembered that the owner of the first rank was sitting in front of him. She is really the best of the best, so he decided to take advantage of the curse to increase his own level. At that moment, the girl already got up from the table and was about to go to her own apartment, where she would spend time alone before the exam. She thanked for the third time for helping her, and she was sincerely glad to meet Chen Yume. The student waved her hand and emphasized that the next time Ba would better buy food in the store, so as not to die of hunger and wait for his savior. Suddenly, a notice came from the system that the girl mentally insulted him, so 1 unit was added to the strength of the spirit, and soon the long-awaited competitions in the official arena had to continue. Everyone hoped that in the process of battle, all candidates would be able to prove themselves 100%. Therefore, the first battle was about to begin, and this time the rivals were to become Chen Yu from the 7th Corps, and his familiar number 13, Mary from the 1st Corps. The guy did not expect that at the very first game he would have to fight with Maul, but he understood that he had to give up the full Soon the presenter announced that the official competition, which determines the fate of all the candidates who came today, is about to begin and put all points. According to him, 20 ordinary players participate in today's competition, 12 with a high rank, and it turns out 32. These 32 players randomly were divided into two groups of 16 participants, and already in the first round they will meet face to face. And the champion will be the one who will win 5 victories in a row and climb to the top of the standings until the end of the competition. Now the rules were over and could begin. People discussed who could become a winner and set approximate rates. According to some, students who have received a chance to participate in official competitions already halfway to victory. First, the player Chen Yu was announced at the number 21, who was against the number 13. It was a competition of 2 odd numbers. The guy's mother and his sister had long been sitting on the balcony of the audience and sincerely hurt behind Chen, being louder than all other observers. In addition, people were interested in the fact that the player who defeated everyone in the first test participated in the first round. Meanwhile, Chen was already ready for the battle and told the opponent that she would not succumb to her only because she has a large number. And the girl was sure that everything would end soon, and it was unlikely that after that someone else would pay attention to the guy. But she emphasized that she was not discarded from the account because everything could return differently. However, in the eyes of Ma Li, Chen Yu looked special. She was not supposed to be in a dream, and the guy looked like a real prince and the dream of her whole life. It was difficult for her to get rid of attraction to him. And besides, it is not clear how the guy could become so attractive in just one night. Ma Li already saw his real appearance at the first meeting, and what she saw now was completely opposite. As it turned out, last night, while Chen tried to meditate to better prepare for competitions, extraneous sounds interfered with him all the time. Everything was because of an unknown person who lived in the 22nd issue and interfered all the time. At some point, Chen already ended in patience. Then he began to beat the wall that led to that number, with the words so that the student who lives there does not interfere with the preparation for an important exam. But in response, Yu did not hear anything, though the noise was finally replaced by silence, and at least some reassurance came to the body of Chen. From such screams, his head managed to get exhausted, so now it was difficult to come to meditation on his own. But the pleasure of silence did not last as long as we would like. So in a matter of seconds, the roar and screams from the next number, where there was some kind of party, began again. Chen took this as a desire of the participant to show his insolence and superiority over him. So he decided to act, or prove himself. Yu accepted the stranger and quickly undressed, decided to begin to fulfill his cunning plan. The energy from his body poured out, so it was difficult for him to restrain himself, which he answered the neighbor. Then the skill of his hands rose a lot and the indicators of the body also grew. 7 hours later, the morning came, but Chen did not feel exhausted. But on the contrary, an increase in bodily energy was beneficial before the exam. The guy was sure that no one could compare with him, so he was proud of himself as if after defeated competitions. In the morning, his skill of hands increased by 86%. 32 units were added to energy, and even the life expectancy increased. For him, this was the best decision to recall the simple, not only in pleasure, but also in favor of his own body. But as soon as Chen opened the door, he was waiting for a lot of people who wanted to convey to him for fraud before official harassment. The guy did not understand what was talking about, and where so many people came under the door of his number just overnight. As it turned out, a member of the 22nd room filed a complaint, who was interfered with a noise from a Qin room all night. He even managed to record extraneous sounds on the recorder. At first, Chen did not know what to answer, as he planned easy revenge, and as a result he received an even worse answer for himself. But then the guy gathered his thoughts and asked if the participant 22 admits his defeat, because it was he who started this war when it comes to male dignity. At that moment, condemning thoughts from people poured at him, due to which it was possible to raise confidence, luck, and temperament. He did not expect that due to such skill it would fall under universal condemnation. Suddenly, people began to envy him because they themselves did not have such an opportunity. In addition, now he combined the best qualities, and now, during the competition, an opponent of Ma Li approached him and suggested that Tetatetus have seen after the entrance exams. Then Chen reminded the girl that they were on the battlefield and she needed to behave more responsible, which she listened to. At that moment, the girl inflicted an unexpected blow, and Chen realized that she simply deceived him, taking advantage of vulnerability. Suddenly, the girl nevertheless admitted that the guy's words touched her and held out her hand to her pocket. from where she got a green hat. Then she smiled slyly, and putting it on her head, said that there are some things that are much more important than instincts. Namely, she noted that one should not think that the attractiveness of the guy will save him from attacks, and he will not interest her until he passes the exam. But Chen had his own plan, and smiling in response told the girl that she finally began to act under her large number, and not just chat. Molly accepted the challenge and rushed at her enemy with all her might in order to again inflict an unexpected blow to him, which would distract him. From the first sink, the guy managed to evade that this time it was quite difficult, since Ma was quite dexterous and well-oiled techniques. Chen himself felt how good his opponent was this time that at some point even began to doubt his own abilities. Ma was quite flexible, so that she could use techniques that were not subject to many other participants. Her every movement really looked epic, so Chen decided not to restrain himself and expressed a compliment to the girl. Suddenly her movement became very strange, and, as it turned out, Mu kept Chang right in the air that he could not understand what was happening to him. Spectators also noticed how flexible and were proud of the second daughter of the MA family. Thanks to her skill, she is able to hold the player Chen Yu. Meanwhile, there were discussions outside the combat zone regarding what is 13 and a girl at number. However, in any case, some hoped that the girl would be able to get rid of Char and get him out of the game as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be hard. During observation of the coffin, the guy's mother drew attention to the construction of the body of Ma, which could easily give birth to several grandchildren for her, and the girl herself restrained. Chanya asked, "Is he really at the bottom? Although a weapon, for example, a knife that would be not good to get during the competition, because it would be against the rules." He ordered the girl to let him go, because Pravda felt some threat of her life and a possible victory in the final exam. However, Ma Li continued to play with the enemy, and asked why he was so shy that he does not even allow himself to touch his native places. But such a game did not last long, and the girl moved to the next plan, namely, a strong blow right into the head of the participant under the number 21. At that moment, she immediately swung and hit the guy with all her strength that any participant could no longer stand on her feet. But this is definitely not about Chen Yu. The guy stood motionless because after the attack received to his blood, these several dozen units were added. The girl's blows were quite strong, and she herself was surprised that the guy continues to stand on his own, as if he had some kind of protection. People were interested in watching this course of events when such a beautiful girl can brag about not only her body, but also the skill of technician. But in fact, Ma began to panic a little, because she did not understand where Chard had power to withstand her. However, the girl did not know about the special curse, which Yu wears in her body and gets only more strength from her strong blows. The young man really felt that when the opponent continues to apply so many blows, he simply could not restrain himself and demonstrate his strength. But he only liked the fact that MA without stopping continues to attack him. Not suspecting that he was harmful to himself, she was sure that the more effort would be attached and more often hit, this guarantees her a faster victory. Therefore, now she rushed at the guy with her feet and wrapped around his body hung on him, which led to additional damage on Chung. But soon she could not stand it and realized that having already received 100 blows, the guy still had not blinked his eyes, which testifies to his supernatural power. At that moment, Chen decided to provoke MA even more, and asked if she did not eat enough that her weak strokes did not even leave the scratches on him. And the girl was already thinking about the fact that she could not cope with the guy with simple methods, so she had to use slightly different abilities. Suddenly, her movements became too fast that even Chen barely had time to evade the movements of her body, which she tried to confuse the participant. He did not understand what was the matter, since the blows were so strong that they really jeopardized the life of Chen. Now he had to incredibly quickly dodge and jump throughout the arena like a rabbit that did not even have time to change the pose in space. He already asked the girl to behave slower in direct text because it was against the rules. But soon the same green cap that the girl took out at the beginning of the game hooked his gaze. As it turned out, it was a combat skill of Ma Li, which she was very proud of. The martial arts of a gift cap, that's what she called it. At that moment, Chen decided to protest and called to the jury and the host, who together controlled the course of the game and compliance with the rules. The guy expressed his dissatisfaction with the fact that his rival uses forbidden weapons. But as it turned out, the examiners checked her cap and she was not more than an ordinary accessory item. But in fact, the cap was made of ordinary material, fabric. But as soon as the owner directed her energy into her, she became incredibly firm. Materials were made in certain places of a particular time and space. They are really appreciated and just so impossible to buy from ordinary mortals. Now Chen was even more confident in the correctness of her protests. But the girl went through all the checks and there were no problems. Therefore, the examiner was right, and this year it was impossible to influence anything. And only next year they will put this material on the list of prohibited. Then Molly thanked her husband for his understanding and was sure that thanks to her difficult accessory, she would win anyone in this game. Therefore, without warning about the continuation of the competition, the girl again applied a combat blow with her cap, which in a second attacked chest. He managed to quickly evade her, but it was unfair that Ma herself did not make any efforts to get closer to the guy. At that moment, he really felt the danger from which he had to defend himself with an unknown method, since he had not heard about such material before. Soon, Chen noticed that despite the good possession of martial arts, the girl continues to attack only at a distance. Now he was going to determine the result with just one blow, because the girl could not harm him anymore. And as soon as the guy accelerated in order to hit the opponent nearby, he noticed that her gaze is not the same as an ordinary person, but has black eyes. Now, he had to immediately slow down his own legs that there were even traces of his shoes in the arena, which was erased from such power. Soon he became directly opposite the opponent and felt something strange when he looked at his own hand. Although before I did not see Ma touch him. As it turned out, the cap left laser nets in the space of the arena, so Chen accidentally touched one such, and now had a slight injury on his hand. Now he just had to linger in a static position, so as not to accidentally touch such a threat. He was dangerous to be in this place. There were more and more laser nets, so soon it could be declared that retired from the competition. Now it's time to find out who is really Ma Li, who is something like the immortal, but her eyes were given out by the fact that the girl is actually a demon. Now, Chen's emotions have turned into anger, because he could not even think that behind a beautiful girl under a big number, a real snake would hide. He realized that the previous 100 attacks were not serious, so he voiced his opinion directly into the face of an unfamiliar enemy. Chen began to recall certain actions of the enemy and remembered that she was too much weakened by his vigilance, so that he would not notice anything from her movements. But then she took advantage of the cap to attack him again, and she herself explained what this accessory consists of in order to weaken his vigilance again. Hand-to-hand combat was absolutely without the use of weapons to demonstrate his pseudo-honesty and mood for a true game. And then the use of distant attacks by a cap went. Her goal was precisely in scattering her magic nets, one of which she injured the guy. And then, she flooded these threads with her energy, and they began to be controlled exclusively by the desires and instructions of the Ma Li. And now it is worth the guy to return to battle. How these threads will instantly cut him into small pieces, so she will be able to win. Then the girl smiled and called Chanya a wise guy. As it turned out, he thinks not only the lower part of his body, but also uses logic. In the eyes of the audience, the girl was a rich, smart, incredibly powerful person who could defeat such a participant as Chen Yu. And in her case, wealth is also a kind of power. Therefore, according to the words, now it is time to Chen Yu to admit his defeat and give her the will to move on. Chen did not understand why he returned again to what was once. After all, his father taught him not to step on the same rake. Near the guy, the same green cap flew again, which the demoness, pretending to be an ordinary person, manipulated and controlled. Suddenly, he felt that he could not move his body at all. Even it was now difficult to breathe in the air. The whole body seemed to be fettered. Then the girl turned to him and said that her father was really well done. But the baby himself did not understand something. With precisely the forces of martial arts, it seemed to everyone that from the first core, she made her opponent motionless. But in fact, thanks to the damage to the curse to his mobility, 100% was added. Therefore, in a matter of seconds, he managed to break all those threads that the demoness attacked him, being sure that she had almost won. But the girl said that everything was right. Like their life periodically deepens into our T situations, and the way out of them is not always located. The audience came to the conclusion that this year, they had another worthy person. He deserves the title of the most capable from the first core, namely Ma Li. Now people were sure that she deserves admission to the University of Jing. Although a day later, the judges thought about Chen Yu's candidacy, because the plans of such a clear strategy were really impressive, and the student showed her abilities and now deserves the assessment of 5. Suddenly, the girl grabbed Chanya by the clothes and said that since she ate the food of his family, her hand would not rise to kill him. But she had a different plan, thanks to which I would win. Namely, get the enemy from the game. Now, she tried to push the chain from the arena, but he finally showed his strength and did the same with the girl who fell outside the battlefield. All the audience and the jury were shocked, as everything went to the fact that he would win and become a winner this year. Soon, the presenter was announced that the player of Chen Yu had escaped from under the control of Ma Li and pushed her out of the arena. The girl was sitting on the floor and looking into the guy's eyes asked how he succeeded, and he pretended to be, "They say I don't understand what was at stake." Then the girl directly asked how he managed to free herself from her technology, since the cap was still on his head and had to be controlled by Ma. Chen pretended, "They say he did not even notice a new accessory on his head and did not know what he had to do with it." But later he began to recall the chronology of their last disputes and decided to tell. However, he could not go into details regarding his strange curse, so he had to rephrase everything a little differently so that the demoness believed. To begin with, he tried the topic of the conversation with the goblin and asked why the rival dared to put this cap on him in general. At that moment, Ma thought that there was some kind of conspiracy theory. Chen smiled and said that the theory of conspiracy is also a kind of power. Now he copied the quotes from the lips of the Ma Li. She was even more angry because she did not expect her words and strategies would once be used against herself, and not allowing him to ask his strength anymore. It was soon announced the winner of Chen Yu from the 7th Corps, who won the first victory in the competition. The guy immediately ran to his director, who called the young man his patron of wealth, thanks to whom he received considerable funds. And the Cher's family could not hold back the tears of joy due to the fact that the guy did this nevertheless, and proved his strength and power to everyone. Now on TV, a congratulation for Chen Yu from the 7th Corps, who was the first to win in today's fight, was voiced. Not everyone was satisfied with his victory, and especially the very leader who called him an ordinary puppy. Meanwhile, the presenter believed in inviting everyone to look at the next game of this competition and chose players. The player from number 20 participated in the mood of the game, namely Ba Huantiao, with a level of strength of a little more than 1, and Zhao Torment, with a level of force by several tenths more than BA. The girl confidently walked into the arena, while hatred and a strong thirst for victory appeared in her eyes. All viewers are looking forward to the next battle, which should become a good show and bring certain changes. Zhao tormented in the arena, who turned to the rival and said that now even ordinary players would fight against her. But she did not see anything wrong with this, as she treated everyone the same, and in any case was sure that she would win. Then Chen Yu turned to the director and said that in his opinion, for Ba Huantiao, it would not be difficult to go to a quarter of the finals. However, the man was sure that the heiress of the BA family would be easy to even win, so there is no doubt in her. In addition, the director knew that the elder brother of the BA was the winner of the 20th entrance exam at the university, and in the present tense was the chairman of the student university of the University of Jing, and his strength is at least higher than that of a Qin. And although the guy had to hear about the BA family, he knew that their heirs were rather strong, but did not think that they were standing out because of other powerful families. But suddenly the director recalled one feature that none of those around him knew about the BA family. As it turned out, the director continued. Once one of the members of a powerful family died rather tragically. However, his story was interrupted by the jury loud voice, which proclaimed that Zhao Torment began a cruel attack on his rival Ba Zhuanqiu. Zhao Torment, who in terms of strength was slightly exceeded Ba Zhuanqiu, began the offensive, but the girl was not going to bend under it and fought to the last. The father was also present among the guests, so most of his colleagues were most awaited by his daughter, who now did not live up to expectations. The girl tried to make as much effort as possible to win her victory almost with her teeth, like a wild tiger. She had to use her extreme speed to not only evade blows, but also try to apply at least some attack to the enemy. But during one of her movements, the guy managed to get his foot right in her stomach, due to which a severe damage was caused to the participant. It was surprising for the guests that Zhao Mucho reacted faster than Ba Zhuanqiu and inflicted his strongest blow that was used during these competitions. Then the guy quietly approached the victim and apologized, but he was not going to give up even in the case when he was on the verge of death, because he was going to reach a quarter of the finals. The audience began to shout the name of the guy, who already became the winner. While Ba Huangqiu tried to rise from the floor after such a blow, the girls were especially pleased with the guy, who now became even more beautiful in their eyes, as he owned good combat techniques that he masterfully used. Soon the presenter announced that Ba Huangqiu was defeated by Zhao Much, who now looked like not a little chance to go to the finals. Meanwhile, Chen Yu watched the girl's behavior and could not believe that she would just give up, because he understood that she was quite stubborn. The physical condition of the Huanqiu wanted the best, as she was very thrown into the heat and the nonsense began soon, which more and more did her painfully. The girl remembered the moment from childhood, when her older brother became a real champion, and then her father sincerely rejoiced for the victory of his son. It was at that moment that she saw the smile of her father, who was proud of her son, so all her childhood dreamed of getting at least some praise from him. Even being small, she captured in her head, which would definitely once become a champion in order to feel his father's love. Her childhood dream was so strong that she all her life put a lot of efforts for training and endurance of her body. And now, when she, just like her brother was in competitions, was so close to victory, it was difficult to come to terms with the loss of her childhood dream. Therefore, in order to prove to her father that she could also be a champion, the girl tried to get together to get to her feet, and her little by little did it. Soon one of the teachers ran to her, who knew that the difference between the strength of the student and Zhao was quite great, so the lady would be difficult to continue the battle. But she was not going to abandon the idea of the champion. So she said that everything is fine with her, and she was able to continue. Then she managed to rise, and despite a large number of injuries and dizziness in her head, she was still ready to fight for the victory. At that moment, Zhao was surprised, because the behavior of BA was more like suicide. However, she said that she lived only in order to win in these competitions. She clearly knew her goal, and despite the obstacles, wanted to prove to everyone, and especially her father, that she was worthy and could become a champion. All the time, Huanqiu recalled her father's strict gaze, so she emphasized that she was no worse than her older brother and could reach his level. Her opponent Zhao did not understand why the girl needed to prove something to someone when it is so easy to admit her defeat and live calmly. However, in any case, he did not expect anything else from Ba, so he was ready to defeat her again and suddenly rushed at the girl. He was not going to give way to someone in the final, so I did not want to regret even a beautiful girl who was already exhausted. However, despite this, she still quickly evaded blows, and this time she understood the technique that the enemy uses more. And Zhao himself was most motivated by the payment to the winner in the final, which was almost 200,000 and could cover all its expenses, and it was from mentioning monetary reward, Zhao became as if wild. So he concentrated all the strength and struck the hand of Ba Huyantiao. According to the host, the guy managed to break the bone in the opponent's hand with just one blow, which was not a fact that she could continue to fight further. Then Zhao said that his father lies in the hospital, and he needs money for a kidney transplant operation, in order to at least have a chance to live. Therefore, according to him, he needs this victory more, and he will do everything possible to save his father, who is almost at death. At that moment, the guy again tried to strike his grand blow, but surprisingly, Ba Juantiao managed to withstand such an attack. Therefore, after the fight of two strong players, they both flew off in different directions, which caused an impression, as if a big explosion had occurred. Zhao was even barely able to resist her feat, as he did not even expect such a level of strength in a girl who played with a broken hand after many defeats. However, the Huanqiu actually was trembling and covered later, because her body could not withstand such a load, which was unusual for the human body. The guy was surprised that the girl was able to withstand his blow and even suspected that she somehow managed to reflect his own strength. But as it turned out, Zhao kept his most important weapon to the last, and now came the moment when it was necessary to use it. His muscles began to grow at incredible speed, and in a matter of seconds the body has completely changed. Now he has become several times larger and stronger, and despite his threats, Ba still drove off to stand to the last, and said that she also had the reasons according to which she needed this victory. Zhao took it as an insult, as if his problems were depreciated, and since the girl did not know how to accept the defeat, he was determined to force her to do this. Suddenly he began to apply dozens of blows in a few seconds, against which it was difficult to survive. But the girl did not give up and went to her goal. Now Zhao was like a real demon with supernatural abilities, which resembled a girl in her image. Soon the guy moved to the use of a bear paw, which became his strongest attack during the official competition. He was absolutely sneezing, for what reasons his opponent did not choose to lose, as he had to fulfill his goal and save his father. Zhao himself began to get tired and could not gain full light air, but still longed to make the girl recognize her defeat. Then the rival spoke to him and said that it is not important that whose reason for victory is more significant. The thing is how ready to lay out for the sake of fulfilling a dream. Indeed, despite the fear of death and a significant difference in the levels of power, Ba Huangqiu was ready for anything and sincerely demonstrated it to the entire auditorium. Suddenly, after her last words, an incredible force began to radiate from the girl's hands, which was previously unusual for her, and no one knew about this. Zhao also could not have foreseen that the rival power could increase so much that even he could not resist her blows, and he would have to dodge. Then Huangtiao's gaze changed a lot, and she looked directly into Zhao's eyes, watering for everyone, thanked him. Meanwhile, Chen asked the director, "Is that the same BA family who sacrifices his own life to gain strength?" It was something like his curse. The more injuries he received, the more he became. So now the outcome of the battle was decided, but not voiced. Around Huanato, her own aura began to form, which no one had seen before. Now the girl was ready to use a special skill. Zhao did not have time behind the enemy's movements, and did not even notice how in a matter of seconds, she turned and flew on him, at a supersonic speed. Her movements were elusive for the human eye, so it seemed to some that the girl was simply teleported in space and used magic. But as soon as the girl was near Zhao, she moved to the implementation of secret martial art, namely the technique of the BA family. Thanks to the attack alone, she managed to drop Zhao from the floor and drop it into another corner of the arena at which the competitions were held. The guy with great force fell right on the floor, and a column of dust formed around the fact that a certain layer of earth was destroyed. Under the body of Zhao, a crater formed, in which he lay as defenselessly as the Huangtiao herself recently lay. After using this technique, the girl was very tired, as she used the entire supply of energy in her body for such a blow that it belonged only to the members of her family. At that moment, her mother ran up to Bo, who carefully took her daughter by the shoulder and sincerely congratulated her on the victory not only over the opponent, but also over herself. The guests began to shout the name of the winner, who brilliantly completed this competition and demonstrated her own stubbornness. The girl's father also sat on the balcony, and on the words of congratulations, he only replied that this was a real shame, and he did not want to recognize such a victory. Soon the Wantiu was taken to the medical office and put in the ward with Zhao, in front of which she apologized for a strong blow, and that she took the victory for herself. But the guy was more upset due to the fact that he would have to quit his studies and find a company that is engaged in dark affairs to collect money for the treatment of his father. However, Huanqiu did not need funds, so she said that she would give her award for the treatment of the father of the defeated guy. Meanwhile, Chen Yu was in the corridor near the medical office, and thought that it was so stupid not to think about his own health. Then he realized that Ba Zhuantiao is really the most dangerous opponent in these competitions, so it would be necessary to make a lot of effort to win. Finally, the break ended, and the presenter voiced that the time had come. And the first to appear in the arena, Chen Yu from the 7th Corps and his rival Ba Huangqiu, both participants were the strongest. Chen Yu was known as a physical monster, and the only similar player in the entire centenary history of the existence of official competitions. Mother and sister were mostly hurt for a guy who was already sure that he would receive a reward, but he would have to try well. However, Ba Zhuantiao was known for her knowledge of the secret techniques of the BA family, and the girl had a hard time to get into the final part. The girl's father was sure that 2 obvious winners appeared in the arena, but the question was, which of them would allow themselves to give slack? Chen understood that the main thing in BA techniques is speed. Therefore, it was necessary to do everything possible to throw the girl from the arena at the beginning, not giving her a chance to go to the finals. Moreover, the level of power of Chen's was several tenths more, and although the figure was insignificant, she played a big role in who would become the winner. Therefore, without warning the opponents about the beginning, the guy rushed at her very unexpectedly and said that he knew everything about her abilities, and therefore would become a champion. The girl was very touched by these words, but she did not have time to react, as Chen had already managed to inflict a strong blow to her, from which the opponent had blood. But despite the heavy damage, the system said that the level of strength of the 2 players became the same, and now they had to continue to fight on an equal footing. After such news, Chen Yu began to panic and worry about his victory. Therefore, he had no choice but to move on to the next plan. And suddenly the Wantiu used the martial art of the blow, namely the secret technique of her family, which now has become stronger than before. Then Chen received a head injury, but for her he had temporary compensation and several hundred to force. However, he lost a lot of memory levels. The Wantiao managed to evade the hammer from the guy's blows, so while without attempts to attack, she tried to protect herself. This was very annoying the guy, and unable to stand it, he directly said that he would throw the girl off the battlefield as soon as possible. The girl heard a warning and now tried to be even more careful, so she immediately reacted to the sound that was heard right above her. At that moment, Chen tried to rush at the rival thanks to a strong jump, but Yuanqiu was warned and repulsed to attack. Then Yu received a severe injury, since at high speed he fell right on the floor. But for this, he added almost 200 QE energy in the blood. In addition, he had spare plans, so he was not worried about the dexterity of the girl, and knew where to press to beat her and get the long-awaited victory. After his successful jump, Huantiao again hit the guy directly in the face and broke his nose. But the curse again added almost 200 to the level of blood of Qi. From the injury, the guy also added more than 200 to the blood of Qi due to damage to the bones. The strength was added to them and all force continued to be added endlessly. But the only thing Chen was afraid of was to shock in the face, so that later it will not remain with noticeable traces of missing blows that will see everyone. But when the girl heard the request not to see in the face, she decided to continue to do this with even more force in order to rather eliminate the enemy. However, now the nominal force in the amount of 1,000 units was added to these. Now the girl herself was to blame, because before Chen could not give all herself to the full, but now it remained to rely exclusively on the appearance. But Huangtiao did not understand what these words were said to, and this fact was even more alarming, because she did not know what he could expect the enemy. Suddenly, the girl missed the first attack on her own, although before that all the time in the competition, she deftly evaded every sink. Then Chen decided to prove himself and struck his foot, thanks to which he threw the opponent into the air, and she turned over several times, not having the opportunity to stop. At that moment, Yu himself was able to tear himself away from the ground and hold the body in the air, not for a second touching the floor. After which he gathered all his strength together and inflicted a decisive blow to the Wantu, thereby trampling it into the ground with all the whole movement. Without any movement, she lay on the floor, and Chen, without a drop of regret, asked Ba. Finally, she remained motionless. But without waiting for an answer, he rushed into another battle with the words, which would finally put an end to this competition and show a real champion. Suddenly, a message appeared from the system that the power of Ba Huangtiao increased by 1/10, and now it was more powerful than Chen Yu. The girl's appearance also changed, and she acquired strange features that were not inherent in a silent student before. The audience was also shocked, because right in front of their eyes, the daughter of the BA family made a breakthrough who could not make any of their family members over the past 90 years. Now, the girl was considered a real treasure of the BA family, and another Ege could not name her, because such a miracle is characteristic of a small part of the fighters. Meanwhile, Chen Yu had to accelerate his movements in order to avoid Huangtiao's blows as quickly as possible. Suddenly, he decided to ask what to do in the case when he has no particular reason to win, and now the guy decided to demonstrate what real luck is and go to his third plan, which he thought out in advance. While he was saying this, his rival more and more accumulated magical power in his hands, which could have collapsed right on Chelin as if a huge stone. Suddenly the guy asked when the rival was going to repay him a duty for the food that his mother prepared, and he treated the poor Ba. Then the girl remembered that on that day she really sat in the corner, while everyone else, together with her families, had dinner with homemade food. And only thanks to a stranger in the form of a chain who approached her and offered food, she felt warm and tenderness, which was so lacking for real support. And now Ba said that she would do everything that the guy will only ask, but she will never give her victory in her life. Suddenly Chen was behind and said that Ba's behavior herself destroys her life, so she will not be soon if she continues in that spirit. And if the girl really wants to repay, then the guy ordered her not to die. Wantiao understood what these words were of, but it was too late, and it would never be possible to return everything to the past. Therefore, having no desire to continue the meaningless conversation, she suddenly swung and touched the enemy with her hand. At that moment, it was used by martial art in the form of frost, which did not allow to make a single movement to the one who surrounded the fighter. The girl was still to death. She did not scare her. The main goal of his whole life was to get this victory. But Chen did not understand why such sacrifices. He tried to shout through the ice zone surrounding his body, to finally understand what he was fighting against, and whether it was worth going to the end. But he never heard an answer, because Huantiao abruptly began to fall, and turning to the guy, apologized to him with the words that in the next life everything would return to him. The guy managed to free himself from the ice trap and carefully caught the girl lying in his arms unconscious and effort for life. Zhuya immediately began to run up to Chen Yu and congratulate the victory, hoping that he would say a few words to a large audience. However, the guy had other plans. At that moment, the largest television station in the city of Qing arrived, which would like to interview the winner of official competitions. But despite their popularity and a large number of supporters, Chen Yu refused to comment on what happened. The jury and journalists could not understand why the champion was behaving as if he was not satisfied with his result. However, according to the guy, it would be strange if he glowed with joy, because he did not want to become the champion at the cost of someone's life. But Huang Tiao was taken by doctors and reported that the girl is in critical condition. That is, there is a great threat to continue her life. For this action, Chen felt his guilt. They say precisely because of him now Ba could desk, and he will have to live with this until the end of the days. While the guy was going to leave the arena, he came across an examiner who did not give him the opportunity to go further and demanded a conversation. But Chen thought that the man was going to congratulate him on the victory, so he smiled with a playfully smiled and, shaking his hand, immediately thanked. After which he quickly turned around and went further in his direction. But the examiner wanted to report that the award ceremony was about to begin. However, the guy found out in advance that the remuneration would be paid, even if he does not participate in the ceremony itself. Journalists demanded that Chen stop. But the presenter drew attention to the fact that a huge hole formed in the wall. The director of the 7th Corps tried to speak to his student, but he only instructed one ear in a hurry to hear important information. And without even letting the man finish, he asked where the process of the ceremony will take place with the awarding of the winner. The jury was shocked by this issue, because they did not know how the director of the 7th Corps managed to change the decision of Chen Yu. Soon the ceremony itself began, which was accompanied by a large salute, and was about to give the floor to the winner. A large number of spotlights were aimed at a guy who nevertheless took a microphone and went to say hello to the audience who was waiting for him. The director was infinitely proud that it was precisely his student who could demonstrate the level of teaching in the 7th Corps. Chen now received special attention from girls who also admired him as a fighter who has a good body and can think through strategies well. Meanwhile, his leader continued to observe the progress of events from the large monitor of the house. However, now the physical properties of the winner began to dominate, since many people were fond of at the same time, and this contributed to the release of adrenaline. But Chen kept himself in his hands and said to the microphone that the path to becoming the champion was not easy, and above all, he wanted to thank his mother. When the woman heard such warm words, she barely restrained her tears and was grateful to her son for not even forgetting her at such moments. Secondly, the guy also thanked his sister, and although she often offended him, he knew that for his sake this girl was ready for anything. Then Sister Yu also began to cry, and could not believe that her younger brother really became a famous champion. At that moment, the leader thought about the words that Chen, her brother, did not take this into account before. And also, the guy wanted to express his gratitude to Li's sister, and if she had not made certain efforts, he would not be in this competition. Then the girl was surprised that she was remembered even when she was not present at the process of struggle for victory. In addition, this caused her strong indignation, and she almost broke the TV while trying to pick herself up. Also, the guy did not forget about his director, who, in addition to support, also put high bets on him and was sure of this victory. As it turned out, before that, the young man had an agreement with the jury for the fact that for every word of gratitude he would be paid 100,000 bonuses. And one person even agreed to write off all debts from the past if he hears gratitude to his person. He even promised to pay almost 2 million on top. The old director of the 7th Corps was surprised that his colleague from the 2nd building received such a good salary as to just give 2 million. The gray-haired man begged the student to choose the 7th Corps, but the young man had already made his choice and did not plan to change him. Therefore, during the voicing of thanks, 2 directors competed among themselves for who the guy chose nevertheless, and which of them will receive the best reputation among the students. And as it turned out, Chen nevertheless voiced a hollow director from the 2nd building, which was expected for the man himself. All his life he was sure that money would always be able to solve any problems, so he did not even doubt his own little victory. However, Chen decided to play a little with the feelings of the director, and publicly voiced that it was he who kicked him out of school right in front of the introductory exams, and also disqualified. He thanked that it was the director of the 2nd building that humiliated him and insulted him while he was in the arena. And this really affected him in many ways. And without such motivation and humiliation, the guy would not be able to reach the level that he was now. The director of the 2nd building almost lost consciousness right on the spot. He wanted to get a good PR, and as a result, his position became only worse. Parents who came to cheer for the participants began to discuss the 2nd building among themselves, and come to the conclusion that it was time to transfer their children from this place. The director tried to resist, but as if a devilish nature came out of him, which was angry for such a basis. But soon the time came to sincerely thank the director of the 7th Corps, who directed the guy's talent in the right direction, and helped him. Chen called the old man the best teacher who met in his life. In addition, now he was the real wealth of their city. For every good remark about the director, the guy was promised to pay 100,000, so he did not spare his words and continued to speak eloquently. Now all the attention from journalists switched to the old man, from whom they wanted to hear how to raise such a student and teach him. Finally, Chen could calmly exhale and relax. However, he was still worried about Bayuan Tiao. Therefore, he soon went to the hospital and was already standing in front of the door of the medical office, where his experienced rival was supposed to be. Opening the door quietly, he heard a rather familiar voice asks the doctor, "Is it really impossible to do anything with what happened?" It was the father of the girl who begged the doctor to do everything possible. The specialist explained that the condition of the lady is very serious, and all organs were damaged. Now it remained only to wait for her death. Because even when trying to pour energy into her body, there were no guarantees that she could stretch more than a few days. The girl's father was desperate, because despite her strict attitude towards her daughter, she was able to do what no one from the family was able to. Therefore, when he heard about energy, he immediately remembered the breakthrough, which broke all the records, and this was urgent to study. The girl could not just die. Suddenly, Chen Yu, who could not stand such conversations, burst into the office and emphasized that we were talking about a living person. He turned to Father Ba and said that he was hoping. They say he had at least a drop of conscience, but as it turned out, he was mistaken. The eldest man was not glad to see the guy, so he asked him how he managed to enter the ward. But instead of an answer, he received a strong blow in the face with the words that he does not deserve to be called the father of Huantiao. Chen returned home in the evening and could not fall asleep because of the thought that it was impossible to just lie and wait for the death of Ba Huantiao. Suddenly, he jumped out of bed and hit his fist resolutely said that the girl should not die, especially when her strength is really unusual. He tried to come up with a way thanks to which one could at least try to save her. So half the night raised his head, and suddenly an incredible idea came to him, thanks to which a chance to save his former rival could appear. Then he abruptly got out of bed and went to the table, where there was a box with things that he accidentally found in the mysterious kingdom. Suddenly, a USB panel appeared in front of it, on which the code was registered, but the guy did not understand them well and needed help from the side. Then he rushed to the phone, and calling his sister Lee, asked if he knew something about the software master, who would be a good assistant when hacking a stake or other programs. And she herself understood such matters. So she ordered Chen not to touch anything, because he could only make it worse with excess hands. As soon as the morning came, Lee personally met with Chen and led him to a beautiful palace in which he had never been before. As soon as they went inside, the servants rushed to the woman and politely greeted with her guest. Ma Li wanted to hear an assessment regarding her maids, so I asked Yu what he was thinking about such girls. However, he answered rather restrainedly, as his brain was busy with others. The guy even knew that the girlfriend's family was quite rich, but could not imagine that wealth would be of such size to have a similar house. First, Lee asked about her sister, who, as it turned out, found out that there would be guests and hastened to move to the restroom, from which she had not left for half an hour. Chen did not know that Lee had a sister, and as it turned out, it was she who would have to help them solve the first stage of his plan. As it turned out, when the younger sister found out about Gasta from the entrance exams, she was very happy. She managed to get a small observation camera, which she planned to install in the toilet of their houses. And then she only had to wait until the guy goes to the toilet and she could get high-quality video uncensored. That is why she did not leave the room for half an hour, and when she heard that someone was approaching, she began to worry. However, Ma Li was not going to wait long for permission, and opening the door to the restroom, she called her sister a pervert. The girl had no choice but to tell the truth, so for starters, she decided to calm down and gather her thoughts. The woman's name was Ma Yan, and she was engaged in the study of the structure of the male organs and how they work. She was most interested in how high quality their systems work. Therefore, she did not see something bad in scientific research, for which she was going to use the intimate video of Chen Yu. But according to the guy, there was nothing good in this. So in which case, he was going to endure to his own home. Lee laughed and said that the guy needs to be careful on the street, since dangerous perverts are possible there. Ma Yan did not understand why they laughed at her and tried to prove that she was misunderstood. But it was difficult to do. Chen Yu decided to shake the girl's hand and said that he absolutely understands her good intentions and what contribution she wants to make to science. Then she thanked and asked Chen to provide her with a file that requires decryption, and she would help. When the guy took out a memory card, the eyes of Ma groaned, since she never saw such an inventory. The girl's room was fully equipped with computers and other equipment, which may be needed to work with the network. She managed to deal with the flash drive, and when she would have accepted for work, the older sister still could not wait for the results. According to Yana, this file was the key to some advanced artificial intelligence, which was a very important information. However, comprehensive decoding was impossible. Only research institutes with the necessary knowledge and equipment could conduct it, and Yan herself can only try to do something, and Chen agreed to her proposal, because he will at least know in which direction it is worth moving. Suddenly, Ma Li grabbed the guy's arm and said that it was too hot in the office, so it would be better to wait for the results outside. Chen continued to turn to the girl a large number with the nickname. So behind a cup of tea, he asked who her parents were. As it turned out, the girl's orphans themselves earn a living. According to her, it was not difficult to earn money. Her sister likes to increase. She only has to develop some kind of program. So millions immediately enter the card. At that moment, Chen felt like a loser, since from his experience to earn money was the most difficult task. But now it was the turn of Ma Li to ask questions, and she asked why the guy needs to break this memory card. And suddenly she suspected that this was the reason to meet her, and now she demanded a joint dinner for her services to get to know each other better. However, she began to fantasize, and came to the conclusion that the guy would want to take the opportunity and demand something more. But suddenly she held out her hand to the young man's face and said that some stages could be missed from their acquaintance. And in the end, time is gold. So she offered to immediately go to business and not behave like strangers. Chen thought about the girl's words that the time was really gold, so he was ready to agree to her offer. At that moment, Ma Li began to show herself even more and decided to get closer to the guy even more. So she reached out to face him. Suddenly, her sister burst into the room, who said that she managed to find out and hack the secret code. As it turned out, information about annotations to human genes was stored on this memory card, and this was indeed a treasure. And if once humanity will solve all the secrets of genes, then a huge evolution will pass, which will bring them to a new standard of living. After the information heard, Chen was convinced that everything was going well. Therefore, it may even be possible to bring some kind of benefit, because the government of the world all the time puzzles over the question of unraveling the secrets of genes. And he has some kind of a piece of materials. Ma Yan said that some information was also stored in the file, which she called the resurrection tablet. Of course, it was unrealistic to resurrect from the dead. However, thanks to a certain set of genes, people can optimize some cells, giving a second chance. This information reassured the guy, and gave him the hope that it could still be able to save Ba Huangqiu.